What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Pokemon Rants podcast. While many of us may be deep down the rabbit hole that is Pokemon, there is a world more established and longer running in collectibles, such as comics, sports, coins, and more. From these spaces, there's so much to learn and perhaps even be transposed to our young and bright hobby. Now, while I may not be at the level where I can get a cat litter sponsorship, I can only aspire to be there one day, much like our good friend here, Rob. All jokes aside, however, much like the strength of Wolverine's adamantium claws, Rob at Neo Cards and Collectibles has had a lifetime of collecting and a plethora of experience of which we can learn to depend on. From comics to sports to Pokemon and more, please join me in welcoming Rob to the Pokemon Rants podcast, episode 49 in the first of 2025. Rob, welcome in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we got a few minutes to talk right before we got kicked off here today. But it's a pleasure to have you, Rob. I hope that we can chat some more even after this and, of course, in days to come. But for those who are just joining in, for those that just heard you for the first time, Rob, give a little bit of an introduction. Let them know who you are and kind of what you do.
My name is Rob. I run the Neo Cards and Comics YouTube channel and I guess the Neo TCG channel now, which I just launched a few weeks ago. I've been doing content for, this will be the 5-year anniversary of this year in May. I've been in and out of collecting all the things that you've named across since basically the mid-'80s. On up, and have come and gone throughout the years, like probably most of us as we age in and out of different things and financial situations change. And I've started in sports cards and then got into Marvel cards and then got into comic books and then got into Magic the Gathering and then got back into sports cards and back into Magic, and then more time passes and now I'm in all of it, unfortunately, for my time and my wallet. So, but that's kind of the real brief macro level history for me.
Okay. And one of the things that we always like to do here, and we spoke about it just a few minutes before we started, Rob, is kind of give us a hint of your background, because that helps us color the conversation and we understand where you're coming from in terms of your education, as well as what you do for a living, and then we'll weave it in.
Yeah. So I have a degree in sales and marketing, graduated from the University of Akron, and then for most of my career post-college, I've worked in the healthcare industry as a account manager. So I'm essentially out in the field visiting accounts most days. So a lot of time in the car, which is good because I hate being in an office. I hate being in a cubicle all day. And it also is honestly a benefit because it frees me up to listen. I basically all day in the car, I just listen to podcasts and YouTube, and I'm constantly consuming a plethora of other content and constantly taking things in, which makes things, keeps me in the loop of what's going on everywhere. And also, I have the ability to sometimes, if I need, I've recorded videos in the car before. Like that has been a thing when stuff goes super crazy. Not often, but if something really, really kicks off, I have 100% recorded a video in the car.
Shout out to James at Z&G Emporium, the guy known for making the car videos. Do you actually do the video, or do you just do the audio and then
I just
typical?
I'm a benefit because I am 90% of my content is a screen share.
Yeah. Okay.
So I get to cheat a little bit on that, though. Actually, the couple times I have recorded from the car have been the rare face cams because it's a little complex to do a screen record only on an iPhone when all you have is your iPhone handy.
Yeah.
You don't have your home base set up
while you're driving, nonetheless.
No, not while I'm driving. I'm crazy. I'm not that crazy.
Well, you mentioned something here that I didn't know before, and so I love to hear it. Akron, Ohio. That's where my mom actually was growing up, and so she was there for the majority of her childhood. And I was born in Parkman, Ohio.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so not too far from Akron.
There, that's right in the middle of the snow belt, right off 422. Yep. When I lived in the Youngstown, Trumbull County area, we would drive up 422 to go to Cavs games and Indians games all the time, right through Parkman.
Yep, Indian. Yep.
At what was it called? It was like the Green River Tavern or something there on 422 by one of the lakes. I think it was too young. Out the Parkman. Yeah. Yep. Used to drive through there all the time, heading up to Cleveland the back way.
I'll say this confidently, Rob. You're the only person in my adult life that I've mentioned Parkman to, and they actually know what it is. So thank you for that. You recognize it's an actual city. I'm not just making it up. Thank you.
And in the snow belt.
Real quick, just want to say thanks to everybody who's joining in now or after the live. We got iFOMO jumping in. I saw a few actually come in earlier that of course, YouTube removes our chat comments for some reason. But Pokey Chef's in the house. Trainer Glenn, good to see you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us. As always, if you have any questions as we go through today, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll weave it in the conversation accordingly. Rob, we always talk about this, usually in the context of Pokemon, but this is why I'm going to love today's conversation because of that wealth of knowledge you're going to bring and just the variety of collecting. Where was that start for you? Was it in the beginning? Was it sports? Was it comics? Where were you at in that early stage of collecting that got this all started?
Baseball cards. Mm-hmm. So my dad's best friend, or one of his best friends, my dad worked for the Youngstown Vindicator newspaper in Youngstown, Ohio, was a sports photographer, and he had a really good friend that was not associated with the paper, but he had season tickets to the Indians, the Cavs, all the Cleveland teams for his clients and stuff. Now, back in the 80s, you didn't need season tickets to the Indians because they were terrible.
Nobody went anyway.
No one went anyways, but he had really good seats, and we would get to go, fairly frequently. And he was a massive baseball collector during the early 80s, like even pre-junk wax boom. He had an entire room in his house dedicated to baseball cards, like sets, wax, sealed boxes, like before it was kind of trendy.
Wow.
So we went over there one time for the first time to go to an Indians game. I don't remember my exact age, but it was probably the mid 80s. I was probably 5 or 6, give or take. And he would give me packs of baseball cards. Yeah. And that honestly started it. So then it went from that to every time we would go to a game, like I would want to buy the complete set for the team that they would sell in the team shop. And then as a kid, where I got my hair cut, where my mom would take me to get my hair cut was directly across the street from a baseball card shop on East State Street in Hermitage, Pennsylvania. And I'm blanking on the name of the shop. I could see it with my eyes closed, and I think it's still there.
Of course.
So I would always beg her to take me in there and buy like a loose pack here and there.
Yeah.
And then from sports, then it transitioned into, in the early 90s, I transitioned into Marvel cards. I got real hooked on Marvel cards. And then that naturally led me into, almost simultaneously, that led me into comic books. Because you kind of, almost get one.
It goes hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got into comic books right at the peak of the early 90s comic book boom. Like that's when I walked in, one of the first issues I ever bought, if anyone knows comic books, was Jim Lee X-Men 1. It just came out on the shelf. It's the #1 selling comic of all time. It sold millions of copies.
I love it.
So it kind of linked in together, which how I fell into that was from, in the early to mid 80s, there was a one-off cartoon called Pride of the X-Men. And I remember watching it as a little kid and thinking it was the coolest thing ever. It was basically X-Men done like G.I. Joe and Transformers from the 80s animation style. It was a pilot that never took off.
I was about to say, I don't remember this one. Okay.
They put it out on VHS. It was a 1-episode thing only. But I remember watching that and thinking, oh my God, this is the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And I was at the grocery store with my mom, and I still remember this to this day. Marvel 1991 Series 2. I would have been 10 years old. On the side of the box, they had a picture of Cyclops, and I recognized it from the cartoon. And then I begged her to buy packs of it, and then that was it. I was hooked.
That was it. I have something I don't think I ever showed anybody other than a few friends who actually came to the house. You and I think we're probably, I'm 40, 81.
You're that age where you got to think about it.
Yeah, right. But these are obviously not all of the.
Oh yeah, Marvel Metal.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
this was from my childhood. These are the cards that I kept, and decided that I was not. I still have all the rest of them as well, but all my baseball, basketball cards.
Yeah. I still have my old school binders and complete sets from when I was a kid. Like I have my original 90 and 91 Marvel Universe sets that I put together. My grandpa would take me to flea markets all the time. And as part of that was, you'd always go around to the card dealers. And as a kid, you have unlimited brain space. Then I would know exactly, like it'd be a 150 card set. And I would know off the top of my head exactly what I needed and didn't need. Without even like I didn't need a checklist. Like it was just there. Like I just
knew. We have like 3 sets and it's 150 cards, no problem. Right?
Yeah.
There was no variants, reverse hollows, Pokeball hollow, none of that stuff. No. Just one card. This is the number. You have it or you don't. Yeah. These are great times, man, because this is also I was going to pull it out, but I didn't do it. I have the comics. Which one is the one with Wolverine that has the actual slices in the cover? You can see through for the first page.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think it's Wolverine 50 maybe or 75. It was the anniversary issue.
Yeah. It was the anniversary. Yep. Yeah. And I had all of these comics. And I still have them. And I would sit in my room. I would be opening cards, to your very point. It would link it to the comic book. I would sit there and read every one of that series that I had. And I was happy. Like I didn't need anything else. We didn't have TV at the time for me because it was like we just didn't have it. To put it that way.
I love reading the back of Marvel cards. Like they'd have their little like bars with how powerful they were in each individual category, and you compare them against somebody else. It was like a whole thing.
And then the Saturday morning cartoons. I mean,
yeah, that led me then into in the mid 90s, that led me directly into Magic the Gathering to cross it over to TCG.
Okay.
At school, Magic got super popular. Unfortunately, I didn't get in during Alpha and Beta. I started dabbling in Revised.
Okay.
I think I would have been in 8th grade at the time. I wasn't in high school yet. I was still in the middle school. So I would have been in 8th grade, I think, during Revised. And I remember getting, like, I would skip lunch to use my lunch money to buy singles. Or like ask my mom
a true collector, ladies and gentlemen.
Extra lunch money. I'm like, hey, like they raised lunch like 50 cents or $1. Right. Or whatever to try to like scheme an extra couple bucks out per week that then I would use to go buy like a Hypnotic Spectre or something. Or at that age, you would trade your dual lands away for Shivan Dragons because,
of course, whatever you need.
Than a land. You don't need no land that makes 2 different color mana. That's stupid.
So you were actually a player at the time?
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, but yes. I mean, yeah, I'd buy the starter deck. I would literally sit and lay all the cards out and make up my own decks and stuff. I mean, I was in 8th grade, 7th, 8th grade. It wasn't like it was, I was going to Worlds or something, but
I love it. Taking mom's money for lunch, scheming a couple of extra 50 cents here and there to buy the cards that you wanted to have.
Yeah, man.
This, honestly, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you're supposed to collect. This is how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, this is what it was like back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, I have a not so good story that I'll share, and only my family, and I think my family knows this mostly, and mostly my mom. So I was probably we lived down the street. This was in North Carolina, a small town called Lowell, which don't bother to look it up, but it's about maybe a quarter of a mile at the time when I grew up, to 2 convenience stores on the side, both sides of the street. So I'd ride my bike up there, and that's where I buy cards. They had cards kind of like in the display case. That's the closest place I can go to buy them. Now, there was a proper store, but that was always when Grandma and Grandpa came. Now, I wanted these cards so bad that I had to figure out a way to get them, and I didn't have any money. So I'd come home from school. My mom would still be working, and I'd be by myself. So this probably puts me, I was probably 9 or 10 years old at this time. And it sounds crazy now because you would never have your kids at home at that age by themselves. But then, like, we were going through the streets and coming home at night, like it didn't even matter. But at that time, like, I'd be at home until she got home, and I would always roll coins for my mom. So we had the coin roller, and had this like little dispenser that you would stack the coins in. So, obviously smallest to largest. and you would just kind of slide the sleeve over the coins and just roll them up and boom, because it would kind of pre-count them for you. Well, one day I had the bright idea: is could I fit pennies in this dime roll? I think I could. So I put pennies in there. It was tight. I was tight, but I made it fit. And I kind of closed it up and I looked at it because I always like taped the ends anyway so the coins wouldn't fall out. So I taped it up and it's like, well, this isn't convincing enough. What if they see the brown at the end? I should probably put a couple of dimes on each side. So I put a couple of dimes on each side. Still had enough there. And so I take all the pennies, put 1 or 2 dimes on each side, tape it up, and go down to the store and buy cards. Well, little me, not thinking too far ahead, I didn't know how long that was going to last. Yet I pretended like it was a forever cheat code. So I would go to the store
Literally
for weeks. And obviously they cracked those coins and they saw there was pennies and they were watching for me to come into the store. So that's a little something from my childhood where I got caught trying to get cards from the local store and using some innovative ways to coin money. Yeah.
Things we'll do.
At the time, it was Ninja Turtle cards.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it was worth it. Rob, all right, so we're in here. We're in Magic. This takes us into high school. Where does it go from here? You fall out. You mentioned it earlier. Is that at college, and you come back after college?
I fall out in high school for a little while because
Okay.
high school you figure out what girls are, and then you don't really care about cards anymore.
Right.
And then college, I actually got back into Magic. I initially started at Youngstown State for a year, and then my family moved, and then I moved with them, and then transferred to Akron. And Akron had a pretty vibrant Magic Gathering community.
Oh, nice.
So I fell into the competitive scene of Magic the Gathering and played fairly competitively. Like I was going to Friday night. I got back into it slowly, and then was playing Friday Night Magic all the time. I was going to like states down in Columbus when they would do those quarterly. I never got like that good. Like don't get delusions of grandeur here, but like I was pretty decent at my local shop.
Okay.
Also, to my detriment, at that age, figured out what a credit card was and figured out, well, I could just to your whole penny wrapping thing. You know what's better? You just swipe a card and they just keep letting you take booster boxes home. You don't actually have to pay for them.
This is great.
Yeah,
wait,
it was
a bill.
amazing. What, Odyssey came out? Yep, sure. I need 3 boosters of that. Let's go. Got myself into a decent chunk of credit card debt buying Magic the Gathering cards for a few years there. Had a really nice collection. I had dual lands, whole 9 yards. Because now, I'm in my early 20s. Like I realize, wait, those dual lands actually are pretty good. I should probably hold on to those.
Yes. Whoops.
Eventually sold off. Did that for a few years. Sold a chunk of that off. Actually, pretty much my entire collection as I wrapped up. Because you know how it is with TCGs. It's that treadmill, especially if you're playing competitively standard. It's that constant treadmill of I just spent a ton of money and then like 8 months later, I need to spend a ton more to stay on that cutting edge. And eventually I got to the point where I was just like, what am I doing? Like, this is fun. Don't get me wrong. But like, what am I doing? I have $5,000 in credit card debt as like a 22-year-old with no real job. And like, what is happening with my life? Like, I got to get things together. So sold pretty much my entire collection. Stopped playing, fell out of everything again for a while. Dabbled in sports cards again very briefly, and then really was out of it for a decent chunk up until about 6 years ago or so. I would come in and out. I would fire up Magic Arena. I would play Magic Online here and there. Occasionally I would buy a couple packs of sports cards. I would read comics on Marvel Unlimited, but I wasn't buying issues anymore. So that's kind of how I interacted with it on a very, still staying like, sticking my head in every once in a while, but not spending a lot of time or money invested into it. And then right before the pandemic, the Browns drafted, Baker Mayfield in 2018. And I said, this is my guy. I want to get some cards of him. So that brought me back
Was your
in
okay.
2018. Not buying packs, was just like, oh, okay. You know, I want a PSA 10 Baker Mayfield, you know, rookie card. Back then, that would be $5 or $10 before everything went absolutely crazy. So I kind of already started dabbling a little bit, and then obviously, you know, COVID happened and everything went absolutely crazy. And by the time COVID rolled around, I was slightly ramping up a little bit. I'm like, oh, like this Luka guy's really good. Let me buy a couple of his things. Jason Tatum seems cool. Let me grab a couple of his things. So I've been a massive fan of the NBA since even before. I mean, obviously, you know, Northeast Ohio, we have the LeBron factor, but I was a big fan of the Cavs during the Doherty Price era. And then in high school, the Indians were dominant and you could not get a ticket to save your life. And it was super expensive because that was the mid 90s team into the early 2000s. But the Cavs sucked and you could get Cavs tickets for like free practically. We could go to a Cavs game on a weekend with a date for cheaper than you could go to dinner and a movie. So we would go to Cavs games. Me and my friends would go to Cavs games constantly. You pay $5 for the worst seat in the building, and there was nobody there. You could basically walk down and sit practically wherever you wanted. You could go. You can have a night out for like $12.
Right.
So we were going to Cavs games all the time. So I've always been a huge NBA fan. Unfortunately, when LeBron was a rookie, I wasn't buying any of his cards because I was too busy spending money on Magic. Otherwise, that would have probably worked out for my benefit better.
Sounds like Magic was at the bane of that pinnacle moment in your
those
young
early college
adulthood.
years cost me. Well, it bred me good financial sense later in life because I vowed never to get into credit card debt ever again. I don't think I've had a credit card payment since then that I have not paid off at the end of the month.
I would say during the month cycle, of course. Is that what turned you away from it? Was the debt is what made you step back and say, you know what, this is too much for me? Or was it the game? Was it the rat race?
It was the constant, like, I love the game. I loved playing it. I loved the community around it that I had in my local area. I had a ton of fun all the time. But it just turned into a little bit of the time investment of it. You know, you got to, if you're playing competitively, you know, you got to go to events, you got to practice. And back then, you know, especially then in the early 2000s, like online really wasn't a thing. They had a real jank online. I don't even remember if it was live in 2003. It might have been, but it was real rough. So if you wanted to practice, you know, you're driving up to the shop on a Saturday or having friends over and you're spending like, you know, 6-8 hours testing out decks or whatever. It wasn't just click a couple buttons and fire up your next game. But mostly it was that financial grind of like, eventually it was just, what am I doing here? It's like new set comes out. Okay. You know, got to buy boxes, got to rip packs, got to get the cards, got to hurry up and get them. And then it's like, well, no, I need the foil version.
The next one.
Yeah. So I think eventually that just wore me down. And I think, honestly, I feel like that happens with a lot of players across TCGs. You get in, you go hot and heavy, you burn yourself out, and then you kind of turn around and come back like a few years later. I think everyone has that story, at least as a player, maybe not necessarily as collector, but I think as a player playing even, you know, semi-casually, you just burn yourself out on that stuff.
It's a lot. I only played in one regional, but I played a lot locally, played a lot here in the house as well. And to your point, just to keep up with that, like you got to watch the scene. You got to be watching local tournaments. If you're not going to them, you at least need to be watching them now, at least online, see what's going on, follow the latest threads on what the latest decks are. And it's like the meta just always is moving. And it's a lot. It's its own area in collecting for each TCG itself, not to mention the collecting itself and just enjoying the open packs. Real quick, I do want to say thanks, Dan. Catch 'em All Collectibles donated 20 memberships. Appreciate you, Dan. Good to see you, my friend. I actually saw a comment, I think, on one of your videos, Rob, where he's like, look forward to seeing you on Wonders podcast. And he made a comment about your current video. So I appreciate you being here, Dan. Thank you so much. And hope all is well with the family, my friend.
Yeah, Dan and I have cross paths in various comment sections across both of our videos.
I've seen them around, a couple of them, and I didn't realize because I stumbled on you slightly before I would say this year, and I caught things here and there. It just YouTube algorithm threw you up. I was like, oh, this is interesting. I watched it, And then, of course, I subscribed, and I was just kind of catching things here and there. But then when I really started getting hot and heavy is when I started hearing you talking about Pokemon. I'm like, oh, okay, now he's into Pokemon. Great, let's hear it. Let's hear it. So speaking of, I know you jumped in around, I think, Lost Origin time frame.
Yeah. So the first Pokemon boxes that I bought were Black Friday of 2023.
Okay.
My local shop had a Black Friday sale, Lost Origins and Chilling Reign for $80 and $85 a box. And I am, I'm a disciple of, or I shouldn't say disciple. I'm a big fan of Rudy from Alpha Investments. I've been watching him even when I was completely out of Magic. I was still watching Rudy because I think regardless what you think about him, he is a good content creator. Like, I know
he's
he can
fun
be
to watch.
polarizing in some, but he puts out entertaining videos.
Yeah.
Even if you're not, I wasn't spending a penny on Magic or Pokemon or anything else, and I've been watching him years leading up to, starting to actually, get back in the cards heavily, because he was kind of my way to kind of stay engaged on, get a casual glance at what's going on, even though I'm not necessarily active in those communities, and it's entertaining content. Like, the guy is funny. He's legitimately fun to watch. So it was a combination of something I've been thinking about for a while. I got him, little evil Rudy, chirping on my shoulder. And then a lot of it too was, at this point in time, I'm 2.5 years in the hardcore sports card space. I'm going to shows constantly. I've been doing content for almost 3 years at that point. Like, I am deep in the weeds. And just based off what I was seeing, I have a lot of Northeast Ohio is blessed with, I have a 50 to 80 table local card show pretty much 1 to 2 every weekend. I could probably go to 15 shows a month.
That many?
Yeah. I mean, they might be like an hour or two drive, but I have easy access to at least probably 15 shows a month if I really wanted to.
Wow. I didn't realize there's that much. Okay.
Yeah. Like I said, some of them are closer. Some of them are 5 minutes, 10 minutes away from me. Some of them might be 2 hours. But I could get, like, if I need to get to a show, I could pretty much get to a show every weekend with no questions asked. So, I would notice one of the dealers that I'd kind of build a relationship with, his kids sold Pokemon and he sold sports cards. And then there was another dealer that had a small local LCS. He sold a lot of Pokemon as well. And just chatting with them, and you would kind of just watch what was going on, like how busy their tables were versus other tables, how those transactions kind of went down versus others. And I just made a calculated guess of, like, you know what, maybe Rudy's right. There might just be something here where, Pokemon basically is undefeated on sealed wax, or if you just are willing to buy it and not touch it, it just seems like it's naturally going to go up. So I didn't go crazy. I buy a couple booster boxes here and there, and then that kind of got the ball rolling. And, I don't know what, I'm not buying pallets of this stuff. I'm not, super crazy. My general rule of thumb is since I think like Brilliant Stars-ish, I was basically buying 1 case of every release. On specialty sets, I'd grab some ETBs, maybe a case of ETBs, nothing crazy. And that would be like the max. I'm not spending $10,000 a month investing / speculating on Pokemon, but I'm not spending an insignificant amount either. I mean, a case of boosters is still $600. Well, at the time it was, that's not nothing. 80, $90 a box times the case adds up. Even if you're not spending hardcore, for some people that is a lot.
Yeah. Relative.
So yeah, it's all relative. And that's basically what I've been doing ever since, is just slowly stashing that stuff. I have part of the reason why I've talked about this in a ton of videos. Prior to this, I had no relationship with Pokemon. I mean, I knew what Pikachu was. I knew what, I'll joke and say Charizard to trigger the comment section. I knew what Charizard was. I knew the characters, but I never watched the cartoon. I never played the game. I would see people play Pokemon, and us as Magic players, the elitists, would laugh and be like, haha, kids game.
Look at these.
Look at these little kids playing with our real dragons. You're playing with the cartoon dragon. So part of the idea of being able to buy and stash it is there was zero temptation to rip it, because I have no ties to it. I could let it sit. I have 40 151 booster bundles sitting right over my shoulder.
Yeah.
And I have zero temptation to rip it because I don't even know what I'm looking. I mean, I know what I'm looking for to a degree, but I have no vested interest in the game, the singles, the characters to a degree. Like there's no emotional ties there, where I have a box of 91 Marvel Universe sitting back there that every time I'm bored, I just kind of look at it. And I'm like, you could just turn on the camera right now and open that. You know that, right? And I tried it with Sports Wax for a while, and it just didn't work. It would sit for like 6-8 months, and then all of a sudden I'd be semi-bored and like, I could just rip that box. I have a YouTube channel. I could just crack it. That'll be a good video. I'll just open a box.
Right. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
But, you're going to have to take that back.
There was no real temptation to rip product. So I know myself, and I knew that I could stick it on the shelf and not ruin the investment by tearing it open with a box cutter and going ham on it.
Then how do you explain the Charmander, Charmeleon, and Charizard from 151 on your Instagram?
Got me. I don't like having weird numbers of stuff laying around. So I had 42 booster bundles, and I had 2 little loose ones sitting up top that were driving me nuts.
You gotta open it too, right?
I just opened them. And of course, I didn't, it would have been a perfect video. Sports Card Idiot rips Pokemon boxes, and then I hit the mini God pack out of 151 and get all 3 in the same pack. Would have been great content, but I didn't rip it on camera. Or the one time I don't rip on camera. And actually, since that, I did rip, and part of it too is just because I'm doing a little bit more content in that space, I kind of just wanted to understand a little bit. Right. So I got I had Topps MVP buyback cards that I traded in for prismatic ETB booster, or for prismatic ETBs, and I got a couple off target on pre-orders. I think I had like 6 total. So one had a slight tear in the cellophane, so I opened that one just to kind of see what it was all. I got smoked, of course. But so I actually, I need to get card savers. I'm going to be sending a PSA submission off of Pokemon.
Is that your first one?
For Pokemon, yes, it will be. Okay. Yeah, because I have the 151 Charizard run, and then I hit just a couple other little like odds and ends of things. It's like 12, 15 cards, I think. Nothing. Well,
congratulations! Welcome in. Ryan, I do see your question. I will ask that here in a few minutes, so just hang tight, my friend, and I'll get to that one. And thanks for dropping in links for our fellow creators as well, guys. How did it feel opening Pokemon? The first one, probably not so great, but
it was weird because I knew the super big hits. Just from casually following singles, seeing stuff in showcases all the time. But it was just weird opening something and kind of being I don't want to say completely clueless, but just like,
what am I looking at?
I'm used to knowing I shouldn't say knowing everything, but I'm used to opening a product and having a very good idea of what I'm looking for, what to expect, how this opening is probably going to go. And I was kind of going in fumbling it, basically, which is part of the reason why I didn't record it. Because I don't know that actually, I'm sure there would have been some good memes in it, but like I really didn't know what I was looking for to a certain degree. So I know I would have missed stuff. I probably would have screwed up character names,
It'd have been fun though. You should have done it.
Yeah, you're probably right. It probably would have made good content, but it was just weird because I'm just used to having a very good grasp of a product and what's in it. And now all of a sudden it was like I just jumped into the deep end. Okay, I know. As soon as I open the mini God pack, I'm like, okay, obviously, I'm like, all right, well, we're done here.
I'm cooked.
Yeah,
I'm gonna buy more. And he jumped in with 151. How ironic! Was the God pack enough to create an itch you want to scratch in the future, or still it's a no?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not saying I will never rip again, because I'm sure at some point in time for the content of it all. I'll get enticed into doing it. Will I rip a booster bundle maybe on occasion in the future? Sure. But I don't see myself, this is gonna haunt me in like 3 years. I don't see myself ripping booster boxes left, right, and center, chasing stuff.
Okay. Yeah, get your first couple of graded cards back. Have some new sets come out. We'll see you back.
Now, I will say I could see myself buying singles to grade versus ripping. I could see that. I could see myself dabbling in that a little bit, just because I know the grading game so well on the sports card side of things. So, I have a general concept for how a card grades. I've sent plenty of submissions to PSA over the years. I have a pretty good grasp on, what I need. How much do I need to pay for this raw versus what the grading fee is going to be versus if I get a 9. Like, I have that whole math equation down to a science. Right. So it's just a matter of recognizing the cards and being able to have a better understanding of like, what is PSA potentially flag for condition that maybe I'm not used to on the sports card side of things. But for the most part, it's grading a card is grading a card.
Well, I fully agree. Once you have the fundamentals down, transposing that is quite easy to the math perspective. And I think you've done a really good job, which I think is a great hook here for some of the compliments that are coming in the chat. Been following you for years. Keep it up, bud. Thank you, Sea Salt. One of the things you've done really well lately is start to follow what's happening in the Pokemon market. Speak to that with confidence and understand where things are going. And of course, your background, which is the kind of the points I was making in the beginning, your background and understanding other collectibles and transposing that into what you're doing here in the Pokemon space can really pay dividends. I mean, you got a lot of things that you understand with cycles, releases, to your point, grading, and taking that and applying it to Pokemon can be very powerful. And of course, a huge fast forward. Do you see yourself, obviously not on the ripping side, but do you see yourself jumping in more and more? Are you going to start grading more singles? Are you going to get into that space in terms of advancing more than just buying a booster box case?
I think for the immediate present, it'll still be focusing on the sealed side of things. But like I was at a very large show on Saturday, like a 600 table show in Pennsylvania down near Pittsburgh. And I had my eyes out for raw Pokemon, like to keep an eye for stuff. Now, that show is almost too busy. I don't know how often you go to shows, but there's like there's this point where it's actually too busy to be enjoyable. Like it was too crowded. It would have been near impossible to actually walk up to a table and take like a good look at stuff and then ask the dealer like, hey, can I see this and take a quick glance at it? It was just way too congested in the spot that they had it. But I had my eyes peeled. And actually what I was looking for was, and I haven't done the back end, I haven't checked comps on this stuff. What I was actually looking for specifically was CGC 9.5 cases or CGC 10 cases.
Okay.
And if I saw those in a case, I was going to get an idea of how those comps compare to PSA 10s. And then look the card over to see if there was something to potentially crack and cross versus just going straight raw dogging it. Because I know in sports you could get really big discounts on CGC graded cards, and I know they get a little more respect on the TCG side of things, so the math might not work itself out. And there's still a risk there. You're not guaranteed anything, but I've seen, what did I just recently look at? The Pokemon Center Obsidian Flames, the Charmander, right?
Charmander, yeah.
Like a CGC 10 of that is like $500-600. A PSA 10 is like $1,200. So if I can find a CGC 10 and it looked clean, I'll risk it for that. Right. You get smoked if you get a PSA 9, but it is what it is. I mean, that's the game.
I mean, back to your point earlier, as long as you're looking at the card and you know what you're looking for, to make those flips is quite easy. Yeah. And of course, looking at the cert, numbers where you're at in the cert history, whether grading harder at the time, a little bit more strict. It just depends. And of course, that'll give you a nice little guidance. Ray, I appreciate you, my friend. Ray dropped another 10 memberships in the chat. Thank you very much, my friend. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. If anybody's being gifted a membership tonight, make sure you say thanks to those who have gifted it to you. And I know Ryan will drop the link for the YouTubes and all the other good stuff out there. So make sure you guys give a follow. We appreciate that. All right. So one other thing before we move on is I saw you bought your first Charizard as well.
Yes.
3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah. It was more for the memes, but it's actually sitting right here next to me.
There we go. The Charizard. I love it. I love it.
So the Charizard might be the most divisive thing in my channel's history. Every time I say it, I get at least 1 or 2 comments that's like, Charizard is the funniest thing you've ever come up with. And I think Rudy might have said it too, so I don't even know that I came up with it. But and then I'll get at least 3 people, not 3, but I'll get at least 1 comment minimum that is like, you know, something about I can't believe that you don't respect the thing that you're talking about, like the super angry person. And I just take it all in stride.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's again, as Rudy says, you know, down click, share, whatever it is. Like, thank you for my free marketing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's all about the engagement. Let's just be honest. Like, you got to play the game.
Hodo Jake says, can't stay long. I have to watch tomorrow. Just wanted to say hi. Started following Neo about a week ago. Haha. Yeah, a good one to follow, Jake. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for stopping in, and we'll catch you on the next one, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, it seems obviously, especially with your recent channel, which we'll talk more about later. Yeah, you're really jumping head first, which also a couple of your colleagues are as well, or your friends, I should say, into the Pokemon space, which is, I think it's awesome. And we've all talked about it for quite a while in terms of the bleed between sports and Pokemon and other TCGs, and just seeing that. And it's not black and white. It's not just, I just do sports, I just do Pokemon. It's usually going to be some mix of things, but to see, I would say a large amount of people coming towards Pokemon, I think is great for the hobby as well.
Yeah, there's definitely been a lot more crossover at shows that I've noticed with sports card dealers that have never touched Pokemon all of a sudden want it in their case. And a lot of that is simply just, I mean, let's be honest, they're just going where the money is. Like, they're sitting at their table with not a whole lot going on, and the Pokemon table down the aisles got 4 people deep. Right. Like, you know, they're business people. It doesn't take 1 + 1, 1 + 1 = 2 real quick when they see what's going on, you know, farther down the row. And meanwhile, you know, they got a handful of customers at their table when the Pokemon guys are selling stuff like crazy. So it doesn't take dealers long to figure out and play the game, you know, because at minimum, all you got to really know how, you can know next to nothing about the cards. All you really have to do is know how to check eBay comps and know if you could buy at 70 and sell at 90, then you're doing okay. Right. You know, if you really just want to fudge it, you can get by on a lot just with that.
That's the majority of what the card shows are all about. I mean, you're buying at a lower price, reselling at market or slightly below, and making some profit in between. As long as you don't hold that for too long and take the risk and not knowing what you know, then yeah, you'd be all right. Going on to the collecting journey, though, one of the things that I continue to see from you, Rob, is you're not necessarily on the Pokemon side, but you're still ripping packs. You're still enjoying. To your point, you've been doing this since you were a kid. Many people at this stage stop ripping packs. They just, I can't do it anymore. It's just not financially responsible, but you're still enjoying it in that way, which I think is in some way really awesome. How are you this far into your journey and still finding the enjoyment in ripping the packs and opening some cards and sharing that? Is it just for the content? I don't think so. I think it's more for you as well.
I mean, part of it is, I'd be lying if I didn't attribute at least a portion of it to the content. That is not all of it, though. The content of it helps. Maybe it's just it helps mentally justify.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it's more of that than anything else. I mean, I think we all got a little gambler in us to a degree. You know, you want the feeling of when you open that pack and you slide the cards to the side a little bit and, you know, sneak a little peek.
Little glimmer.
You see that little sparkle of something pop through, and you know, whether it's Pokemon, sports, Magic, doesn't really matter. Non-sports, you know, you get that little feeling all of a sudden. You get that little rush, And then, you know, if you're a content creator and you're doing it on camera and you're a live stream, and all of a sudden you're getting that feedback from chat,
Right.
and it's just, you know, all of a sudden you're down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I also, you know, joking aside, I do, specifically on the sports side, I don't want to say I feel an obligation to do it, but I think it's important to open every once in a while to actually see what that experience feels like. Because I think we can sometimes become detached a little bit on,
a little jaded.
Oh, that's a terrible price, you shouldn't buy it. Or, oh, on its surface, that's a great price. But maybe when you rip it, it doesn't feel great because maybe the card quality sucks. Maybe the QA is terrible. Maybe the cards feel cheap. Maybe it doesn't hit the same when it's in person. So it's been, you know, slightly educational, slightly good for content, slightly scratches the gambling itch. You know, it's a little bit of all of it. You know, one thing I learned a long time ago, and this was something that I heard Ryan, Card Collector 2, is one of the bigger sports card influencers, talk about, is, and this is kind of getting into the weeds of content, is taking one thing and how many other pieces of content can you spin that into. And a box opening is a real good example of that, because I've done a whole series before where, you know, I've done like, and it took me 6 months. You know, I did a spreadsheet of, here's 6 boxes of Topps Chrome that I bought. Here's everything that I hit from it. Here's everything that I sold. Here's all the grading fees. Here's all the money I made off of the videos that I did on it. Here's what I sold on ComC. Here's what I sold on eBay. Here's what I sold in person for cash. And I documented that as I went along, from buying the boxes to ripping them to the PSA send-ins to the reveals to what's going off the consignment. And it ended up being like, I think 10 or 15 videos that I got out of that.
Wow.
Plus at the very end, it showed part of the reason I wanted to do it was Topps Chrome had MVP buybacks, which if you're not familiar with that, essentially if you pull a base card and the player ends up winning the MVP that year, you could trade that base card in for $20 store credit at most shops. So there's like this little extra edge of, oh, you know, even if I kind of whiff on the box, if I hit an MVP buyback, it knocks $20 off the cost that I'll get back later on down the road. So part of the point of it was I wanted to show the actual like the profit loss of using every advantage that I possibly had. Like, and I called the content aspect of it the cheat code, because not everybody has that. Most people can't monetize a video of themselves opening a box of whatever. And to be fair, I think people don't understand exactly how much YouTube content creators actually make from posting videos. Most of those videos were $20-$25. It's not a lot. And that's pre-tax, because taxes aren't taken out of that. But it does add up, you know, a little bit here and there helps. So I did all of this, the buying, the selling, the MVP buybacks, factored in what I made from content. And I think at the tail end of it, my net profit was like $200. Like I barely broke even. And that was with leveraging every single angle possible.
You got to sell the wrappers. Yeah, you got to grade the open wrappers.
I'm recycling the cardboard. Like, you know, every little thing that I could squeeze out of that, I did for the most part. So there is a compelling aspect of opening that is a good content driver. You know, I recently hit, which is, it's luck of the draw. You could dud out on a box, but I mean, let's be honest. If I dud out on a box as a content creator, you can make a really good clickbait thumbnail dudding out on a box.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the game that we all play. Like when you're in content, it's a little bit of a gamification of it all. Sadly, the thumbnail and the title matter more than the actual substance in a lot of cases. But you know, I got smoked by Topps Chrome is a sexy thumbnail, you know, or I lit my money on fire doing X. But like recently I hit a pretty big Paul Skeens autograph card. And
the green one, right?
Yeah. But like that's turned into a whole odyssey now that I didn't know when I opened it. You know, I opened it, it was a redemption. So I redeemed it, got it in, did a video revealing the redemption, sent it in the PSA to get graded, gets smoked, comes back a PSA 7. So now it's like this whole conversation of what do I do with it? I ended up sending it back to Topps. It's at Topps right now. I don't know what they're going to do. So it'll be a mystery when that comes in. Like that'll be one.
But it's
I'll
kind of
be
fun.
super excited to open the package, and also that'll probably be a great video of I have no idea what because I don't think they tell you on the website what you're getting. You don't know until you open it.
It's
So
same or equal or higher value.
Yeah,
right? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So it could be the same card. It could be multiple cards. So, like I said earlier, there is, do I enjoy ripping some stuff? Absolutely. But there is definitely a content component of it. And sometimes I just feel like you got to get in there and get your hands a little bit dirty. Like if I'm going to talk about some of these products, I feel like I should at least open some of them to have a little skin in the game.
Well, and I like how in this case, at least part of what you're speaking to is it keeps you grounded to what's happening on the floor with probably the audience that's listening to your content. I think that's a very good point as well. And I was actually listening to that video when you spoke about the card and what do you do with it? You had like 3 options. I'm like, I'd probably send it in if I was you as well and just see what happens. I mean, at this point, at least you're gonna get your value's worth and you can just sell it.
And I think I even said in that video, if I wasn't a content creator, I probably would have been more likely to just sell it as is as a PSA 7 and be done with it. Right. But a part of the reason why I sent it in was I think it's compelling content. And I think it's a good education for how Topps handles these situations, because someone else might get stuck in this bind and might be like, well, what do I do here? And now they have at least an example that they could go to and say, oh, okay, like he had a $1,000 card potentially that was damaged that he sent in. This is what he got. And then they can make an informed decision based off whatever my results end up being that I still don't know yet. I probably won't find out for about a month.
And there's one thing here you didn't mention. I would like to call it out. It really stood out to me, and I see that in small doses across your content stream, and also how you carry yourself. But there was a moment in this conversation where you spoke about what to do with this card, and to be honest, there's a lot of unethical things you could have done, a lot of unethical paths, and you're very clear that you were not comfortable doing that. It didn't feel right. And you wouldn't want somebody to do that to you. And I really appreciated that and I admire that. So just a little thank you aside to say, I appreciate you taking a path that puts the good back into the hobby that you're participating in. I think we all can appreciate that, despite the fact that 50% of your comments were like, oh man, just crack it out and slap some juice on it. You're good to go. Regret it.
So like, just crack it and sell it raw. Just set it in
you're good.
And
just let them worry about it.
No, I did not want to. And one, like, even if I wanted to do that, it's career suicide as a content creator. It's a serial number card. Like, so the internet remains undefeated. Someone's going to be like, a 3 out of 99 Paul Skeens. I've seen that card before.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Wasn't that Neo?
Yeah. Like, I'm not stupid. One, it's not the right thing to do. And two, I'm not stupid.
Yeah. Very, very good choice. Very good choice. Yeah. But no, I do appreciate that thought process and just taking that into consideration. So a small call out. And again, thank you for that.
Thanks. Yeah. I try to be as transparent as possible on all that stuff. Like whether it's that or like when I did, the box opening, the experiment there, and like documenting everything to show, what the numbers are kind of behind the scenes, on that stuff and the true cost of ripping. Because I think some people just swipe the credit card, rip it, and they're like, oh, I did okay on that. But really, when you break some of the stuff down, you really don't.
No, no, you don't. And it's also funny how time, even to your point about does that player hit MVP for the year, like time can change things. So, we open up some Pokemon packs and now the market booms and this reverse holo Charizard from Pokemon Go in a PSA 10 is $100. It's like, oh, okay, well, that worked out well. So pack was $4.
And sports is even the more Wild West because you have actual player performance, which you don't really have in Pokemon. And then the running joke is Charizard can't tear an ACL. Fictional characters aren't getting hurt. They're not doing dumb things off the court to other people or getting in accidents or DUIs or way worse, Deshaun Watson situations.
Yeah.
You don't have that problem over there. So there's this whole other layer of nonsense that could go on that you could have the most perfectly laid plan and then it gets derailed by something completely out of the blue.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah. That you have zero control over.
I think that's a perfect segue, Rob. I would love, one of the things that I'm just not the person to answer it, and I think you are. How do you see some of the differences now? Having your hands in really a little bit of everything, how do you see the differences of these hobbies? How do you see maybe even the solidity of where you put your money, and look at this over time? Do you start to feel like you're shifting from one area to another? Um, I think even one of your fellow friends, what is it? Sports Cars father, right?
Oh, sports car dad, Dustin.
Yeah, yeah, Dustin. Apologize, I got that wrong. He even spoke about recently, what's happening in the market. Are we here for the collectors? Is this just for the whole gambling aspect? What are we marketing for? And I felt to some degree he was focusing a lot on sports. Obviously, that's still happening in Pokemon and other spaces as well. But I felt like he was speaking a lot to, at least in part, sports. But how do you see the hobbies and where you put your money, your time, and what's some of the differences that you can share with the community?
Right now, sports is really focused on the gambling aspect of it, between breaking, the way the products are designed. It really is. It is not collector focused right now. It is very much gambling focused, and the companies push that because it's good for business for them. Breakers move a vast majority of the product because they can microtransaction it, and it artificially inflates the cost of the boxes. When you could take what would probably be a $500 box, but you could sell it for $800 because you're slicing it up into 32 different pieces.
Right.
You can increase that price a little bit and no one really notices because they're paying less for it just to buy the team that they want or to spin the wheel on the gamble of what team they might get.
Okay.
In
Pulling a Logan
Pokemon,
Paul, yeah.
in Pokemon, it feels like, and maybe this is, I'm speaking more like prior to the last 2 months where everything's gone.
Yeah. Forget about the last 2 months.
Yeah,
you will.
let's go back to like right before Surging Sparks came out.
Yeah,
Like around Stellar Crown release. Pokemon feels like it has more end users. Like the cards and collectibles are ending up in more end users' hands, which means they're not transacting around. It's not a race to the bottom constantly. And I think that matters. And sports is not fostering that at the moment. And to be honest, Pokemon's heading down that path the last 60 days anyway. We'll see where that goes. But that to me is the biggest difference, is Pokemon has way more end users versus sports cards. I had a YouTube. This is one of those ones where you think of the YouTube thumbnail before you even think of the video, and it was a massive stack of. I made one of the AI art generators, a massive stack of slabs, and then on the other side I put a little teeny tiny one, and I put supply and demand. And the whole point of the video was there's a ton of supply out there and not enough end users to absorb the supply. When you're making parallels out of every single card and everyone gets a bajillion rookie cards, and how much of this stuff is actually going to hold value in the end when there's so much of it and very few people. The amount of people participating in the sports card world versus actual collectors in the sports card world is not in equilibrium right now, in my opinion. I could be wrong on that, but the numbers in the market tend to bear that out, I think. Whereas Pokemon, I think it's more, once again, prior to the last month or two, I think you guys were more in balance. You had enough of kind of everything kind of, it shift a little bit here and there, but for the most part, you guys were in balance. Right now, you're out of balance, but you were, pre-surging sparks. You almost need like a little timeline, like pre-surging sparks, post-surging sparks.
It's a cycle, man. It happens every series that we have. We have a couple of banger sets that just make people go crazy. Do you want to add in, before I ask the kind of follow-up question, do you want to add in like comics or anything else? Do you see communities there differently, and then the market and how your money moves?
Comics, I am much more of a collector than an air quote investor. And same in sports cards even anymore. I've gotten really narrow on what I actually hold. And it's mostly PC stuff. It's Cleveland stuff. It's LeBron stuff. It's Cavs current players, 90s Indian stuff.
Okay.
Most everything else in my sports collection is very transaction based, you know. And I'm not even really flipping that much sports cards anymore. I mean, I've never been a dealer. I've never set up at a show. I've set up at a show once. Most of my card side of things on the collecting side of like really aggressively going out and getting stuff is more non-sports stuff.
Okay.
Like I have a really nice like Star Wars on.
I was gonna go there. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a really nice, you know, it's topical because Royal Rumble is this weekend. Like I have a really, it's very small, like 8 or 10 cards, but I have a very selective, very nice WWF/WWE wrestling auto collection. I have a lot of really nice Marvel cards still that I've put together over the years. In comics, I'm a huge fan of X-Men. I own most of the major X-Men keys, the big ones. You know, I got the X-Men one this year sitting right there. That I picked up at a con this year. That was like the grail of grails for me across all boards, like across everything. That was it. That was it. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what the new one is yet. I haven't actually figured it out. I've owned that for almost a year now, and I have not figured out like what the next big chase is. But that was a big one. Like that's one of those ones that you never think you're actually going to own. You know,
can you show us?
You always have that one thing in your mind, and you're like, oh god, it would be so cool to have one of those, but it's just never going to happen. It's just way too expensive, or it's just not going to work, or whatever. And I just made it happen. Like last year at the beginning of the year, I decided this was the year, and just, you know, moved some things around, sold some stuff, you know, made some adjustments here and there to make it happen and pulled it off. So I would like to actually upgrade that copy at some point in time. It's a 1.5. It's pretty low grade.
I was about to say it's the 1.5, right?
Yeah,
can you show us?
Yeah.
Love to see it. Yeah, I think I saw it on your Instagram.
The glare will be bad, but
oh, that's great though.
Yeah, it's a 1.5, but it presents extremely well.
Yeah, it looks good. Man, I love it.
Yeah, the spine's got a little nonsense on it, but the main thing that I was concerned about was no major, like, no chunks missing off the cover.
Right.
And I wanted the color to be good.
Yeah.
And this presents really well. Like this, a lot of times this is faded out, or the color on like Magneto or Cyclops. Like this has very little to no fading. And one of the weird things with this is it's actually, so they grade the page color on comics. White pages means the pages are still basically in really great condition. And this graded a white pages, which is extremely rare in this book. Usually they're off-white to white, or, you know, a few other different grades. But yeah, spine's a little jacked up on this one, but it presents great. I was happy with it. I'm still happy with it. I would.
Congratulations, man.
I would like to at some point in time level that up. So we'll see what happens.
I'm happy for you getting those big pieces in the collection, man. It feels so relieving. However, to your very point, like what's next? And I think that even was a great comment from Rudy on his like life lessons video here recently. Right?
I haven't watched that one yet.
Oh, sorry, I won't say.
It's like 40 minutes long. And I keep meaning to get to it, and I haven't gotten to it yet. You can go ahead and spoil it. It's fine.
Yeah, it's just one comment. You know, he speaks about in that in video games how you reach that certain level, and he was speaking to Zelda at the time because it was one of his games. But how you reach a certain level, you get the armor, you get the swords, you get whatever it is, the hearts, and that's it. That's the top level, and you're excited to be there. You get it, and then you realize, oh, what do I do now? Which is kind of back to the point of your next collection piece. Like, where do you go from here? Are you going to start to shift into another place? And I do want to follow back up on the differences of communities and different areas, but are you going to go back to something in comics? Do you think it's going to shift to maybe something in sports or Pokemon? What do you think?
So right now, what it's been lately is, and this has been a very slow process. I think I've only bought maybe 3 or 4 since I picked that up. I would like to fill in the run. So like I have a lot of the key tentpole issues and arcs. Okay. I would now like to get those filler ones in between, which are not that expensive. I mean, some of them could be a little bit more pricey, and I don't have to have them in like super high grade. Like a 9.0 or better is perfectly fine. And a lot of that stuff will run like 100 to maybe $150 a pop, depending on the individual issue and the grade that I want. So I've slowly, and I could make like a massive, I could just sit down and search for every issue that I need. But what I've been doing, and I feel like this is almost on purpose to kind of like extend it out, I've been going one at a time.
Okay.
So I create a saved search for it on eBay, and then I like mentally file it away if I see one of the IG sellers or something have it. And I don't basically go ahead. I look for the one that I'm looking for. When one pops up at auction or in the grade that I want, I'll try to snag it. And then once I get that one, I'll delete the save search and then make the save search for the next issue. So
savor the flavor.
Maybe like I started with X-Men 94, and I think right now I'm on X-Men 97 or 98. I think I have 2 save searches up right now because one of the issues is a little trickier to find. But yeah, that right now has been on the comic book side. My collecting goal is to begin to start filling in those gaps because I have a lot of the stuff in between. Like all the real expensive ones are done, so it's just kind of filling it in. On the non-sports side, I need a Carrie Fisher Star Wars auto to kind of complete where I'm at with that collection. I have everyone else that you would want. I have a Mark Hamill, I have a Harrison Ford, I have James Earl Jones. You know, I have all the major players on the Star Wars side except a Carrie Fisher. And it's one of those ones that I'm just waiting for the right one to fall in my lap because I want on card. I don't want a sticker auto.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's just a matter of one popping up that you know feels right. And a lot of her stuff gets listed at bin. It's super expensive because she's obviously passed away, so she's not signing anymore, justifiably so. So it's nothing. Once again, I can log on to eBay right now and just buy one if I wanted one. But I kind of want to find the right deal. I wouldn't mind buying it in person, but Star Wars autos sometimes are tricky to find outside of the super big shows.
Not necessarily in the auto space, but I think it's fun to always see the correlations. Yeah, a good friend of ours here in the Pokemon community, Legend of Luke, shout out to Legend of Luke there. He actually does artwork for the Star Wars.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so he's actually done a couple of cards. It's super cool. I think I saw Beerski in here earlier. Beerski, good to see you, my friend. He actually got, I think, one of the first ones that he actually sold, and of course, autographed. So super cool. Yeah, but it's nice to see the correlation between hobbies. Yeah, it seems like you have a pretty good idea of how to really savor that flavor, make it last. Enjoy the process of finding that grail or finding that next piece without just going crazy and say, okay, bye. Like, done. What's next? Yeah. Enjoy it.
The hunt is, I mean, I think we've all had this experience. The hunt is sometimes more enjoyable than actually buying it. Like,
exactly.
It sounds dumb, but I don't know that the quest for it is better than actually achieving it.
The journey is better than the destination. Right. So yeah. Fully agree. I do want to go back, as I mentioned, and I want to speak just a little bit more about the differences in hobbies, because again, I think you have a beautiful plethora of experience. And what I want to hear from you as well is, what are your thoughts on the people that you interact with in the communities, and not necessarily the ones you know that you're friends already that you've been talking to for 10 years, but the ones you meet at an event, the ones you run into at the local store. How do you see the differences in the communities between comics, other TCGs, sports, Pokemon? You notice any differences?
Sports is much more transactional based by far. It's much more, you know, I've joked about this in a video. You're not buying the card, you're buying a percentage. Like like a lot of sports stuff is you don't even care what the card is. You just, as long as you get it at a good percentage, you know, you're good. And I think a lot of sports card people think that way. And don't get me wrong, there are a ton of people that collect sports cards, but when you go to shows and stuff, you see more that transactional nature of it. It's sports feels much more money based and gambling based right now. Comics is much more collector based. It's weird. It's weird when you cross over from different communities, how like the pre-established rules are a little bit different. Like in cards, if you're negotiating on a card, it is nothing to whip your phone out and you're both sitting there looking at eBay comps and like, okay, here's what the last 3 sold for. Like, let's figure this out. Like, what works best for both of us? Like, that's a very common conversation to have. In comics, if I pull out GPA, which is the main pricing tool that everybody uses, and I show that to a dealer, a lot of comic dealers are going to look at you and be like, get the hell out of my booth. Maybe not necessarily that aggressive, but it's very much like my price is my price. and if you don't like it, I don't care what the last 3 sold for.
Okay.
It's very comics is much more old school.
Okay.
I would
I can
say.
see that.
At least from the experiences that I've had, you know. And I haven't had any like bad experiences, but it's just like a different, like, I know when I'm looking at a comic, I probably need to step away from the table and
To look
go
at
get an
price.
idea of where the prices are at and have that in the back of my mind already, and
Okay.
then walk up and approach the dealer if he already has it like semi-reasonably priced, and then see if we
Okay.
can work off that down to a number that I feel comfortable with. And then, you know, Pokemon is kind of what I said earlier. It feels like it's much more end users, because I'll be standing around at tables. One of my favorite things to do is just kind of like hang out at a table and
Watch and
almost
see
like
what happens.
eavesdrop in the conversations between dealer and someone buying. And Pokemon, you have much more of, oh, that's $100 card. Cool. I'll take it. Like, I need that one for my binder or my collection, or, you know, I'm missing that one or whatever. Not saying that you don't hear like, oh, can I get 10% off that, or like the last 3 sold
Right.
this. That definitely happens, but just when I'm observing Pokemon transactions at shows, it's much more, oh, you got that sticker for 80? Cool, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Versus if that was a sports card,
Next.
no matter what, whether it was a good price or not, it would be like, hey, would you do 70 on that?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right.
And I think that
So
goes
getting
back
done.
to the person paying 80 for the Charizard wants it for their binder, and the person trying to get 70 on the $80 card wants it more to take it to the next guy and sell it to them for 75.
Right. Right.
You know, and once again, I'm painting with a broad brush here. There are plenty of
course,
all the things that we're talking about in all the categories, but when you kind of like zoom out and look at a very macro level,
right. Yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed, because I came from the sports world many years ago, as I mentioned to you before we started the call, and I did comics and Marvel and stuff, but it was many, many years ago, so I don't interact in that space too much anymore. But definitely, what I've seen is the camaraderie, the openness, the people willing to help, donate their time, and just enjoy the hobby together and truly, sincerely help each other. I've never seen another hobby like this. And even if you take that outside of collectibles and you put that into other spaces, and you're in the tech space or you're in a specific industry, I just don't see it like this anywhere else. And I really come to admire and appreciate that more than anything else than I thought I would have. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not in the weeds to that degree on the like, I've never been to like a Collecticon where it's just 100% strictly Pokemon's like TCG stuff going down, and I'm not hanging out at like, my LGS and seeing like events go down and things like that. But I could, you saying that is not a shock to me, just based off what I see. The transactions and stuff go down, and what I see at my local shows and stuff. That doesn't shock me at all.
Okay. Yeah, and again, things may change, and I'm just not in the other spaces. That's why I was curious. Like, what are you seeing? How does the market side of it work? How does the financial side of it look? What about the community itself? So I think you've done a pretty good job of explaining that. I had a fun one here for you, and it's funny that our conversation evolved the way it did, because I think it fits perfectly. One of the things I felt strongly about is that you're going to be a big Marvel guy, just based on what I've observed and listened to, and just kind of seen over the time listening to you. So I want to hear your top 5 Marvel characters and why.
Ooh, top 5. They're probably all going to be. All right, I'll say 5, but they're not going to be in a specific order.
Okay, all right, I'll give you that,
because we'll be here all night. Wolverine would be on the list. This is going to be very X-Men oriented.
Yeah,
Wolverine 100% be on that list. Magneto would be on that list.
Good choice.
It's going to be a weird one, but I would throw Sentinels on that list.
Really?
I've just always loved them as a villain.
Okay.
I think they're one of the X-Men's best villains, and I think you get some of the best storytelling whenever they're involved. No spoilers for X-Men 97, but like amazing story arcs based around, because that's the ultimate, like, it's the entire basically thesis of the X-Men is we're different, humans don't like us, and Sentinels are kind of the funnel of that energy of the whole thing. So what is that? That's 3.
Yeah.
What else would I put on that list? It's so hard to narrow it down.
I figured I'd stump you on that one a little bit.
Yeah, it's just so hard to whittle it down. I would probably throw. I'm just trying to think if there's someone in the non X-Men that I think would make my list. I've always been a big homer for Gambit over the years, which is a cliche answer, but he's just so great.
He's been super cool.
Early and part 90s. Of it too was like I remember his first appearance coming out like in comics on newsstands when I was collecting back then. So that's probably a decent chunk of it. And he's just a cool character. I mean, he's got like the vibes. He's got the cool jacket. He's got playing card.
I don't care attitude.
Yeah. And then I'll take a modern spin on one, and I'm going to couch this specifically in film. Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man is about as perfect as you could possibly get. I know it's not directly comic related, but there's just no one has embodied a character more perfectly than him as Tony Stark, in my opinion. And it's what set pretty much the entire MCU in the motion was his performance in that role. So like in comics, I'm not a huge Iron Man fan. I'm like not the biggest Avengers fan in the world, but on screen, I think him as Tony Stark is as chef's kiss as you could get.
Fully agree. I was never a big Iron Man fan at all, even the cards or anything. But when I saw those movies, I was like, man, that was good. That was good.
Java, Card Vibe, Gwen, and Dark Phoenix were very, very close to making that list.
Dark Phoenix, okay.
Yeah, I'm like a huge. Dark. I mean, I have right there. I have a huge Dark Phoenix statue.
Oh yeah, I see it now. I see it.
Yeah, and then over there I have a huge Sentinel. And then right there I have a fastball special of Colossus chucking Wolverine. She was definitely on the. If I was gonna swap one out, it would be Gambit for Dark Phoenix, but I went with the cool factor of Gambit.
You know, it's okay if you tell me that your favorite is Wolverine because you're with me. You're with me, so it's okay. That's my favorite. Especially
that was the first big grail that I bought was a Hulk 181, which is the first appearance of Wolverine. Peak pandemic or post peak pandemic, but still way overpaid for it considering what it goes for now. But that was another one when I got it. I was like, as growing up, I never thought I would ever own that book, and even as an adult, I never thought I would ever own a first appearance of Wolverine. That was a big one when I knocked that off. That was one of the few purchases where I brought, my wife was in the loop on that one. I was like, listen, I'm thinking about doing this much money. I just want to make sure that before I pull the trigger on this because I don't want any blowback later.
You're going to see a large transaction. Hit the count. This is why.
No, separate accounts. She sees no large transactions. That came out of my PayPal account.
Smart man.
Yeah, but it just felt like the responsible thing to do of like, FYI, I'm going to do this just so you're aware. And she's like, you have the money for it, right? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, it's not coming out of any of these accounts over here, right? And I'm like, nope. And she's like, all right.
Okay.
Do your thing.
Have fun.
Remember this when I want something.
It was I was gonna say Java again. I saw that you also gifted 5 memberships. Really appreciate it, guys. Do make sure you give thanks to those who gifted the memberships to you. And Ryan, thanks again for dropping the chat in there. You guys, go give Java a good follow as well. Fat Belly Collect says, what interests Neo about Pokemon other than the money? I think we kind of touched it a little bit already, but if you want to speak to it just at a glance.
I mean, from me putting money into buying sealed product, it is for, a large chunk of it is for the money of it. Like, I do think that it's pretty, I hate using the investing word, but that's what you put in all your video titles because it gets better, interaction or whatever. But it really should be more speculating. I just think it's a diversification and speculation. Like, I have a lot of other collectibles. Pokemon is one of the strongest brands in existence. I think sealed is when it comes to collectibles, they're all risky. I feel like sealed Pokemon is one of the safer ones out there, as safe could be. And you know, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the few things that I'm not tempted to open, so I could have it laying around the house and not get myself in the trouble. And I also just think it is kind of interesting. And you know, I've talked about this in videos. It's I could almost see myself slowly becoming a collector of sealed, even though I have no real ties to the franchise per se. Like I didn't grow up with it, but like all of a sudden I'm like, all right, what's this Journey Together box art look like? Or like, you know.
I think you said it nicely in one of your videos recently. You said something like, I actually enjoy buying and looking for sealed and investing in it. Like it's enjoyable for you in that experience just in itself.
Yeah.
Obviously there's a money aspect to it, but you actually still enjoy that journey as well.
Yeah, it's fun chasing it. It's fun finding deals on it. It's fun, you know what I mean? There's definitely a portion of that for sure. I think my running joke is that I collect boxes of cardboard with stop tape on it.
Right. Since Magic all the way till now, it's pretty much all the same. All the same.
Yeah, I'll have you know, friends of mine that deal in TCG, and they'll like show me singles, and I'll be like, unless it's cardboard with stop tape on it, I don't understand what you're showing me.
Where's the stop tape? I don't get it.
Yeah,
there's too much graphic here. I need just brown and stop tape. That's all.
Brown and stop tape. That's all I need in my life.
We talked a lot about grading in the beginning. One of the things that I think that you also can bring to the table, Rob, is talking about your experiences about where do you grade, depending on what you're grading, maybe what some of those lessons learned are that you can share with the community, maybe even a few tips of how you navigate them depending on what you're submitting into who.
Yeah, I mean, a big chunk of my content on my main channel is grading, and that's kind of one of the niches that I fell into, was either covering the grading companies or grading, you know, the actual act of grading, and then also, you know, digging into the numbers and gem rate data and stuff like that, and working with Ryan, who runs gem rate, on like side projects behind the scenes if I had interest in something, and him running custom reports for me to do videos on and things like that. But really, you know, ultimately, we talked about it earlier, grading's a math equation, and it's, you know, your cost of the card versus cost to grade versus what they comp for. And then the X factor is the return time. And that's going to vary on a daily, weekly basis, depending on the company. Like right now, PSA is a little backlog, so it's going to take a little longer to get it back. So maybe you want to grade it with SGC, even though you might make less money on the actual sale, but you're turning the money over faster. But if you don't have the inventory to replenish immediately, maybe you're better off to wait. You know, those are all very personal decisions that you need to make depending on your situation. And you know, I over the years I've done tons of research and tons of videos on, you know, showing what various cards sell for in the various graded slabs and grades that you get.
Right.
And you know, doing research, and we mentioned it earlier as well, you know, knowing like, oh, okay, wait, this card for whatever reason has a very low gem rate. Why is that? And like, how do we identify what that is so we know what to look for when grading it? But really, ultimately, it comes down to grading is a math equation on what to send in and what not to and when. And then, like I said, it's just a matter of how turnaround time is going to be different for everybody. If you constantly have an influx, if you can immediately take the money that you get from selling, and then you have avenues to go immediately buy and sell more, but you're a little hamstrung on, you need to keep the money moving, then turnaround time is going to be more important to you. And these are all things that you have to factor in to it when you're deciding where to grade, what to grade, and when to grade. You know, in some cases it's really simple, and in some cases it could be a little more complex. I think once you have the system down and the muscle memory for it, you just kind of like fall into a rhythm. You don't even have to think about it. But early on, I know a lot of people are very intimidated by grading. Pretty much almost everything I grade anymore goes to PSA. Okay. On sports specifically, it's a no-brainer. They drastically outsell everybody else. And I don't source inventory fast enough to care about the turnaround time 9 times out of 10. So it's not like I need to, send it to SGC to get it back in 3 weeks. I'm fine waiting the 60 days that PSA is going to take, because I don't need to immediately sell that stuff to free up capital to go buy more. That's not necessarily how I grade. Most of the stuff that I grade is occasional raw pickups. Most of it's from stuff that I open, to be quite honest, and then occasionally maybe like a crack out. Oh, that SGC 9.5 looks really good. I'll take a risk on it and crack it out and see what happens if the value proposition's there on it. I enjoy, to me, sending an order in for grading is almost as fun as ripping a box. There's something about refresh. Like, listen, PSA sends you notifications every step of the way. I refresh that stupid page 5 times a day when I have an order. I don't care that they're going to send me a notification when the grades are ready. Sometimes if you refresh, you'll see your grades like an hour before you get the notification.
That's true.
So I am
I've done it.
When I have an order at grading, I'm like a kid at Christmas waiting for Christmas morning to come.
How much do you love the swipe and reveal? You love it?
It's pretty. I like what they've done with that. I do kind of like what they've done with that compared to just pulling up the list and scrolling down the list and looking at it.
Do you play like the Black Label plays or anything like that?
No, I haven't graded with Beckett in years.
Okay.
I graded with Beckett very early on, and now, at least because in sports cards, Black Labels are impossible. They're near impossible. In TCG, it is a viable play, specifically on like One Piece, grades extremely well, and obviously Japanese Pokemon grades extremely well when I've dug into the numbers on it. But on sports, it's not worth it. It's like a fraction of a % of a sports card that grades a Black Label, and you get smoked on BGS 9.5s in sports compared to a PSA 10. So it's not worth it. One, Beckett's more expensive to grade with than pretty much everybody else. Two, they take forever. And they probably have the worst customer service of the big four by far. And they have the worst experience to send in with. Like, the actual process sucks. Like, their online submission form sucks. The tracking on the back end is terrible. And I mean,
they charge
go look at the numbers year over year. It's not that surprising that they're not performing super well. So they're the one company that I haven't graded with in a while. I love, they're under fire right now, but I love CGC's cases. I think they have the best case in the game, and I still use them for some PC stuff here and there, like some Marvel cards that I don't care necessarily what it's going to grade. I just want it in the holder. I still send their way, especially through ComC, because ComC you could grade directly through CGC, but most of that's like non-sports stuff is what I'm sending there. SGC I don't use very often either. I love the company. I love they have the best customer service by a mile. They have the best turnaround times by a mile. I hate their case. I cannot stand their case. I mean, I've had Peter on the channel multiple times. I've told him that directly in videos. I've told him it in person. That's the president of SGC. I cannot wrap my mind around their case. It's larger than everybody else's. It doesn't fit in my hard cases that I put cards in. I don't like the way it feels in hand. But everything else about the company I love. Like, they do have fantastic customer service. They have exceptional turnaround times. But I just cannot get over the case.
Do you start to play in other grading companies like Tag?
No, I'm not.
That was quick.
Well, I just don't. For me, I don't see the reason to use a pop-up grading company when I have 4 very viable options of mainstream grading companies.
Fair point. Yeah.
Like, there's next to, if you're grading for PC, do whatever you want. You know, whatever holder you think it looks best. And even that, like, I don't know that I want to send my cherished cards off that I PC to some of these smaller grading companies, because you don't know what could happen. I mean, we've seen how many grading companies come and go during the pandemic. Like, now things are a little bit more stable, but I just don't know that I trust the smaller grading companies with like especially PC stuff. And then if you're actually talking about trying to sell it, there's really no reason to use them, because you're not adding much value for most of them. Like, a Tag 10 might perform okay, but when you factor in what it costs to grade and what it's going to sell for and how long it's going to take to get back, 9 times out of 10, you probably just be better off to use SGC. It's probably going to be cheaper. You're probably going to get it back faster, and it's probably going to sell for slightly more. And then, in most other cases, you're better off just to probably send it to PSA. I mean, it sucks that we basically have a monopoly in grading because they sell for the most, and it's really as simple as that. But If you want to play the game, those are the rules that you got to play by, and they're king of the castle right now. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. Like they spend so much money and so much innovation. Like you run, I talked about this after I interviewed Nat. You run down the list of just the improvements the PSA has made publicly in the last year, and then you look at what all the other grading companies combined have done, and it's like PSA's list is like this, and every other grading company has like 3 things on it combined of new features that they've added.
When you reach that level, it's a lot easier to move quicker, or at least to invest and put the money behind it and the resources behind it.
Yeah, and companies are so willing to work with them because they're number one in the space. So they have all these eBay integrations now. They have the GameStop thing, which has been massively successful for them. Like the more and more integrations that they get, the more and more it gets easier to grade with them too. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly. You keep mentioning SGC though. I do want to clarify. Are you mostly referring to sports cards when you speak to that perspective? Because I don't see much
across the board. Because I haven't really graded much in TCG, so I'm strictly speaking sports cards. And I know SGC's been trying on TCG. I know they don't grade a ton. I think they graded like 10K last month. Like they're even way behind CGC when it comes to the number of TCG cards that they grade. And from what I've understood, because I've talked to some TCG folks about it specifically, and most of it comes back to the same reasons I just said. They don't like the way they don't like the holders. Like they don't like the way the cards look in the holders. Is a lot of it, and I don't think they sell very well either.
They won't sell as good.
CGC.
Yeah,
and I know even CGC is a struggle versus PSA, and they're semi-popular for TCG. Well, maybe not. Maybe not anymore. But prior to last week,
right? Yeah, well, a lot of things have happened recently, right? A lot of things.
Yes.
I did see one here from Lurkin Lowry. No worries, Lurkin. I appreciate you stopping by, listening while you work. Appreciate you, buddy. Also, one here from Fat Belly. During COVID, people expanded to other collectibles like Marvel cards, Fortnite, and plenty of other stuff. In this boom, people are coming in to form other markets. That's the big difference I'm seeing. What other markets are you referring to, perhaps, Fat Belly? What are you seeing them starting to create now in this boom? Curious.
People are always going to chase where the money goes.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of money, you mentioned you don't sell a lot. Do you run a business to help kind of fund? Because I would imagine opening all this time and all these years, you got a ton of stuff.
No, I mean, I'm very much the hobby funds the hobby. And a lot of that for me is, the content grind. I always viewed content as the dollar box. I don't want to sit and go through a dollar box and grind out that, but I'll post the YouTube video and take my $20 that I get from it and use that to spend on cards. And, we talked about earlier the, getting in debt from the Magic cards. I've been very disciplined on keeping the two worlds separate. Like this is everything that I do in cards, content, flipping, all that. My wife and I joke, I call it fake money because it lives in a completely separate side of my books. It lives in its own world. It is completely separate from what we classify as real money.
Right.
So, every once in a while they cross the streams a little bit, but for the most part, they are very, very separate. So yeah, like I am not full-time cards by any means. The stuff that I open, I'm selling a lot of that stuff off, grading it. I will buy singles and flip on occasion, but that's not, I'm not going out to a show and spending 10K and then immediately flipping it for 20% or anything like that. I'm very targeted on what I buy and what I don't buy. Excuse me. If I run into something, I see a good deal on it, I'll snag it and then, I'll flip it a couple of weeks later or maybe the next day. So kind of a little bit of all aspects of it there on where I choose to kind of go from to grab from. But yeah, I try to keep everything as separate as humanly possible and use a combination of the content, the occasional buying and selling flips, the raw degrades, kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, but to kind of build up the bankroll that I reinvest or, re-inject, I guess, back into the various collecting spaces.
That 90s Marvel box you're going to have to rip after today's stream. Right? I got it. Do you, speaking of content, you kind of use that as one of your mechanisms to help draw in refunds back into the hobby. But do you see that being the long-term strategy? Is content creation, you're going to stay in that space and grow that to be the primary revenue generation for you, or is it just more for fun?
I don't know that I would ever make content my day job. As cool as it sounds, I don't know that I would want like right now. I don't have to. If I don't want to post a video tomorrow, I don't have to.
Right.
Technically, I don't have to, and that's kind of freeing. I also worry about like right now in content, when it comes to like sponsored content and things like that, like if you're really getting in the thick of it of like full-time content creation, you got to take a lot of sponsors. You have to. YouTube does not pay you enough to make a living unless you're massive. If you're like a huge channel, different story. But in the collectible space, 95% of people are not big enough to sustain that. So you have to take on sponsors. And then when you start taking on sponsors, that adds extra layer of complications of, that company did something stupid. How do I talk about this now when they pay me for 2 videos a month sponsor or whatever? And with it not being my full-time job and I'm probably fall more into like the news category of things for a decent chunk of my videos. It frees me up to not have to worry about oh God, I have this PSA sponsorship, but they just did something really dumb. And now I like consciously or not, that's going to live in the back of your mind. And I don't have to worry about that. Someone's sponsored by CGC and they're making content in this space. How do you approach making a video about everything that's gone down in the last week? Like
you avoid
how
it.
critical are you going to be? Are you going to be your true self?
Right.
If they're sending you a check for a couple $100 every month because you're sponsored by them, or they're giving you free grading submissions or whatever. I don't know what their deals are that they work with people. But just, whatever company, like Whatnot's been in extremely hot water on the sports card side the last week, like real bad. I'm glad I don't have a Whatnot sponsorship right now because I would not feel comfortable running an ad for them. So when you go full-time content, those are things that you have to consider. And I don't like having those handcuffs on me. I like being able to, if I want to make a video about something, I'll make it. Like, that's not saying I won't take sponsors, but I am very picky on who I would do a sponsorship with and who I won't. Very picky. I'll do eBay affiliate links because that's like that's net neutral. That's whatever. I'll post an Amazon affiliate link here and there, but like actually taking like, hey, we would like to pay you to insert a 30-second ad into your video or make a standalone video about a product. I am very choosy with who I work with on those. I think I've only had 3 sponsors in the lifetime of the channel: My Slabs, ComC, and Penny Sleever, which is a supply company. That's it. ComC's been the largest partnership by far, and that's been great. I love their platform. And that was when they approached me and I wasn't using the platform a ton. And I said, I'm open to it, but I need to use your platform more. Can we circle back in a couple of months? And we both went our separate ways. I use their platform more, and I was like, okay, I actually like what's going on over here. And then we circled back, and it's been great ever since. The relationship.
Is that what you primarily use to buy and sell outside of your shows?
That's what I use to sell a lot of the stuff that I open that's lower value.
Okay.
I don't have time. I work a full-time job. I don't have kids. That's probably the only reason I have time to do all this nonsense. My wife and I don't have any kids, so I have a lot more free time, and she travels a ton too for work. Like $5-10 cards, I just hate dealing with the listing it on eBay of it all, the shipping of it all. Like, I just don't have time for that nonsense in my life. So I would much rather just box all that stuff off, send it to ComC, pay them their percentage, and just list it on their site and sell it and never have to touch it again. And then usually what I do is I just build up store credit over there, and then I just use that to buy a big PC card.
Okay.
Like, I just bought, what was it, a month ago? I bought, which was a big one for me that I've been chasing for a while, James Gandolfini auto.
Oh, nice.
From The Sopranos, which is obviously, he has very few pack pulled autos, and he's obviously not signing anymore, sadly. So that was a big one. It was like $1,500-$1,600, but that was basically like a year's worth of microtransactions of sending in, a bunch of $1 to $5 cards that eventually adds up. But that's how I like what we were talking about before on like using the hobby to fund the hobby.
Right.
Like I take that small dollar stuff, send it over there, let it build up. And rather than cashing out, I just wait till something pops up that I want and then pull the trigger on it and grab it. And I've bought a lot of like really cool PC cards doing that with, I paid for the cards because I could have just taken the money that I spent on the wax and saved it up and probably got the same end result. But I got to be able to enjoy, opening the product, making content out of it, sending it in, it's the whole game that we choose to play. There's way simpler paths to a lot of this stuff. We choose to go down this quest or this journey of making it probably way more difficult than it needs to be. Like I could have easily just not bought boxes for a month and just bought the card. Like, but what's the
I'm not one you have to explain it to. Trust me, I get it. It. I'm right there with you, Rob. Right there with you. I did see Civic came in. Good to see you, Civic. Thanks for stopping in, my friend. And I see Fuji-san came in and said, "Hey, I should change my name." He also said, "Welcome." Hey to both Neo and Wonder. Good to see you, Fuji. Well, staying on the content side of things, you mentioned it in the beginning. You have a primary channel, Neo Cards and Collectibles. Then you also have now TCG. You also do, is it a weekly or monthly podcast with the Off-Centered?
We do every other week.
Every other week. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Tomorrow night is our Wednesday. And that's me, Sports Card Dad Dustin, Steve, Flipping Steve, and Michael Ham. And we've been, this is one of those things, when you do content, you kind of form these friendships with other content creators. Exactly. And, we've been friends for almost 5 years now, probably 4 years now. And it's just one of those things. It's like, you're already watching their content. I'm sure you've had this. You're watching someone else's content. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, you don't even realize that they watch you. And they comment on one of your videos, and you're like, "Wait, you watch me?" And then it like turns into this, like you realize you've been watching each other for like a year, and didn't realize it. And then we just hit it off. We all kind of collect the same stuff. Like we all dabble in sports cards. We're all big non-sports collectors. Some of us, have different niches that we go into here and there. But yeah, we've been friends for 4+ years now, and that's like, the one crazy thing about content is the friends that you kind of make along the way. Like I've made so many great connections with people over the years just solely from content, like just viewers, other content creators. It's taken me down so many different paths. That's been crazy over the years that I never would have thought when I started. I was like, man, I can't. I'm gonna one day, 5-10 years from now, I'll have 100 subscribers. This is gonna be great,
awesome.
Yeah, this will be fantastic. And then next thing you know, it's like, wait, what's happening right now?
2,000, 5,000, what?
Yeah.
Speaking of 18,000 subs, so right there at it. Congratulations.
I'm like 50 away, I think.
Yeah,
and I'm almost close to
5,000
today
on IG.
At 5,000. I just went over 5,000 on IG. I'm creeping close to 1,000 on the new TCG channel. I think I'm 300.
I know. Yeah, man. Congrats.
Like 20 days. That's pretty good. But I have a cheat code because I have a built-in audience that will port some of that over. So
that helps a lot. That helps a lot.
For sure. It's tough. It was very interesting kind of starting from scratch, even though I do have a little bit of a contra cheat code on that to jumpstart it. That's right. But it was interesting kind of almost starting from zero again. And kind of like in the back of my mind, remembering like YouTube's hard, man. Like it's fun. I would recommend anyone to do it. Like fire it up, hit record. But it is a grind. Like there is not an easy path on YouTube, not for 99.9% of people. Like it is a grind to build an audience and a following, and don't take it for granted. That's all I could say if you got one. But I would, like I said, I would recommend doing it. I have learned so much over the last 5 years from doing content. I'm not even talking about like editing videos. There's just so many life lessons that you could take from it.
It's funny you mentioned that.
Experience.
I was going to ask you, one, what made you want to start the TCG channel separately and not just keep it in your main channel? And two, kind of maybe just bleeding off what you just said, from starting that new one, now already doing this other one for more than 4 years, 5 years almost, what did this new one teach you that you maybe forgot that you're now re-implementing even in your original channel?
I'm trying to think of a good way to answer the last question first.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what I would have implemented backwards. I've stolen a lot from the main channel
and brought it over.
Like immediately, it's like, okay, I know how to thumbnail this. I know how to title this.
Yeah.
I think it was I don't know that I've taken anything backwards, but I think it was another one of those instances where what I just said, don't take your audience for granted. Like starting over fresh was definitely a nice reminder of like, you've built this other thing over there.
How good
like,
it is over there.
Don't
don't mess it up.
One, what an accomplishment that was, and two, like don't ever take your viewers for granted. Like their time is the most precious resource, and there is X number of people on a particular video that are willing to give you, even if it's just for a few minutes of their time of day, to listen to words coming out of your mouth, which if you would have told me 5 years ago that would have been a thing, I would have looked at you like you were crazy. And then the first question was how did it spawn, basically?
Right. Why did you do that one versus just put it in your original one?
Yeah. Really, it just comes down to YouTube itself, honestly. You're better off to niche down as much as possible. And I've done, TCG videos over on the main channel. And they perform actually pretty okay, because I would do like maybe one a month or would mix it in with something else here and there. If something really crazy happened, I would cover it. So part of the reason was just being able to niche down and kind of throw it out to a different audience. Starting from scratch, I'm going to port some audience over. But then the algo is now going to throw me into the TCG space. Like it's going to throw me at different people versus people that normally watch my channel. So that was a little bit of an aspect of it. Two, it also freed me up to make more videos about it, because there is a danger if all of a sudden I start mixing in 2 TCG videos a week on the main channel, it could actually potentially hurt it.
Right. Push
to a degree, because all of a sudden those videos are going to go up. They're probably not going to perform as well, and there could be some ramifications from that. So a chunk of it was, I don't want to damage the main channel. I can experiment over here and kind of play a little fast and loose and have a little fun, and there's no real consequences to it. If I create a second channel and I do it and I mess something up or screw something up, it's not going to hurt anything over here from and I'm like, this is like in the weeds back end YouTube nonsense on no one really knows how the algorithm works. But there is some, if videos all of a sudden don't start performing well, it could overall impact you in a bad way. And I didn't want to risk that. I didn't want to risk what I'd already built. And it freed me up to post more content. I could do daily TCG videos if I want to, posting daily videos and then posting another video on my main channel. It's going to hurt everything. The videos just aren't going to perform as well because people just don't have the time to watch.
Did you see a drop in some of the views on your original channel as you started making TCG content? So they stopped watching here and they started watching.
I haven't. Well, there's really no way to directly know that, but I haven't noticed that. No,
nothing.
And it's been interesting. I was looking at, because I was just curious. It's small sample size on the new channel. It's only been live for 20 some days, but it's like 30,000-ish views already. How differently the demographics are.
Oh, really?
Yes. Specifically in the, I think the way they break it out is like 35 to 45 and 45 to 55 age brackets, and maybe 25 to 35. Basically, my audience on the TCG side skews 20% younger, roughly.
Interesting. Yeah. But it makes sense, though. It makes sense.
Yeah, it was just interesting to see it that fast. Like immediately, it's like there is a stark difference. Now, obviously, I have a much larger sample size on the main channel. I have millions of views over the course of 5 years. But on the TCG channel, to just instantly see after like a week, like a 20% shift in the analytics, which in my mind reaffirms the decision to create the second channel. Because those videos aren't going to go out to those people if I post them on my main channel.
Okay.
So as much as I would have liked to just keep everything in house on one, it just the way YouTube works, it made more sense to split it out.
Well, you're telling me why I've damaged myself, so now I get it.
Hey, I don't know how the thing
Thanks,
works.
man.
I'm just making assumptions. But
Everything that's not worked for me makes a lot of sense now. I should have had a couple of channels by now, but yeah, that's okay. That's all right. I'll work my way backwards. All right. What's next on the channel on the content front? Like, what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna go next? Do you have any big goals for 2025?
no, I don't really. I'm not a big like channel goal person when it comes to content, and I don't even. I mean, on the main, really on either channel, I don't really plan out my content at all for the most part. I really sometimes I'm recording. You know, I'm figuring it out the day of what I'm going to post the next day.
Okay.
A lot of it is me reacting to whatever the current
It's happening,
circumstances
right.
are in the world. One of my claim to fames on the main channel is being quick. If something happens, being able to kind of take whatever happened, put my spin on it, and get a video out very quickly. And that's helped me. There's that old adage of being first to anything. You're gonna ride that wave a little bit better. But that it's a blessing and a curse, because when people put you in that lens when you're not fast,
you can't give up. Yeah.
Hey, how come you don't have the video up on this yet? It's like, guys, I'm eating dinner. Like,
sorry guys, I wanted to get some sleep last night.
Yeah. There's been times where it happened fairly recently. I don't remember which one it was. I have been laid down in bed, starting to go to sleep, scrolling through the phone one last time, and something will catch me.
You're like,
nope. And I'll like sit there for a second, and I'm like, okay,
I gotta get up.
Do I need to do it now, or can it wait till the morning? And I'll run the calculus of it, and most of the time it's like,
gotta get up. Throw the
and
covers
we're gonna
back.
get up, and my wife at this point knows. She'll be like, "What happened?"
Exactly. What video are you going to make now?
Yeah, she's like, "What happened?" I had one the other night where I actually just grabbed my laptop and I recorded it laying in bed.
Did you?
Yeah. I forget which one it was. It was a couple of weeks ago, and I don't remember what it was that happened.
That's the beauty about doing it faceless, right?
Yes. Yes. that a big reason behind that was people don't need to stare at my face just to look at a chart or graph on a screen. Like, I'm almost making more podcasts than I am videos. Like, unless I'm really like walking someone through something on the screen.
Right.
Most of my stuff, you don't need to be looking at the screen 9 times out of 10. And I've actually gotten a lot of comments from people over the years when I meet people at shows and stuff, viewers. Like, I actually appreciate that, because I could kind of turn, like, I can listen while I'm driving.
Right.
I can listen while I'm doing something else, and I don't actually have to be like
physically
locked in,
right,
to air quote watching. So they almost treat it more as like a podcast.
I love it.
But yeah, I don't have anything like super crazy planned, or any crazy goals, content wise. I enjoy going to some of the bigger shows and doing content around those. Those are like the real big things that I look forward to. But yeah, I barely know what my video is going to be tomorrow most days, let alone some crazy goal.
I could just see it now. Laying in bed, you flip back the covers, hit record. What's up, YouTube people?
It's been done more times than I can count, sadly.
I love it.
Taking a laptop with me when we go on vacation, because just in case.
Course. You never know. You never know.
Usually
Disney
I'll plan out content when we're going out of town, but I always bring it along just in case something crazy, because that'll be the week that all hell breaks loose, and it's like, wow, why come you're not covering this?
That's the week that CGC starts grading some fun cards, right?
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I do want to respect your time. Are we good for another 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that okay for you? Okay.
Yeah.
Jumping into the news. Let's talk about a few things. One, I want to hear your perspective. Now, it's been a long, obviously running topic. We've all kind of talked about it, seen 1,000 videos on it. But what do you see now in sports and now Pokemon for CT scanning? Because I think it was a much bigger deal in sports, at least initially, and obviously vintage Pokemon. It's kind of died off. People aren't talking about it too much anymore. Anything else from your vantage point that you see that's still happening, still a big issue in spaces that we're not hearing about in Pokemon?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a massive deal, and I think it's going on like crazy. It's just, I mean, you kind of know how this goes. It's the hot button topic for a week, and then the next thing
Everybody
happens.
stops.
Pushed to the side, nobody cares anymore. But I mean, there's one company that there's a handful of companies now that are offering this service, and they are busier than hell. So a lot of people are scanning boxes, and those boxes are going somewhere. So it's happening, whether we all want to do one of these and one of these and live in our happy little life and pretend that it doesn't exist, but it's going on. I mean, it is happening left, right, and center. And I think it's only going to get worse, but there's really no way to know.
No.
So
no way to do it.
You stay, excuse me, you stay in the lanes. Like because I got this question a lot when I started talking about Pokemon Sealed, and they're like, why aren't you worried about CT scanning? And I think the trick is, for me, is staying in the price points that CT scanning doesn't affect it.
Right. It doesn't make sense. Right.
Yeah. For now, which is the scary part, as these businesses spin up and there's money to be made, they're going to get cheaper and better and faster.
Of course.
To where maybe you can scan a box of Surging Sparks for $10 and see what's in there. And, that's when it starts to get scary. And I think it could get to that point. I mean, I'll never doubt tech. So one day the tech will figure it out. I mean, what was it? A couple weeks, it was like a month ago, they were scanning packs with stud finders or whatever, or the pipe finders.
Oh yeah, right.
that cost $10,
Well, not anymore. The price went up on Amazon. I think like $50.
Yeah, because they sold out.
But no, I think one of the interesting points about that, as we think about it in today's time, to your very comment of, we bought some boxes, just Lost Origin at whatever, $80 a box. Nobody cared. Nobody's going to scan that. But as that box becomes $300, $400, $500, well, you've been sitting on yours. Now it's time to sell it. Well, is that one scanned? No, I've had it here. Sure you did, buddy. Sure you did. Right? I bought it when it's $80. Like, but you probably scanned it since then, right? Because now it's $500. And no, I didn't.
Evolving Skies is probably at the point where it might make sense to scan it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's heading that direction.
He says use code WONDER25 to scan your products. I love it. I think it's one of those things that I think will damage a lot of areas, and we just won't know the impact of it. And how we navigate it, I think, as collectors and enjoying the hobby in the moment, doesn't matter as much as long as we're not buying that higher end. But I think what it does to us, even us, as we're collecting sealed or anything else to sell in the future, is going to be more difficult. So having that brand, making sure you're trusted, making sure that you can deliver over and over and over again, and people just know they're going to get a good product from you, I think that's going to be important as things go on.
Yeah, but even that's scary though, because you might buy product and you don't know where it was at before it got to you. Now all of a sudden you're selling it. Stuff's very transient in this space, and you might be doing everything on the up and up, but you ended up with a case that was scanned. I guess no one would ever really know. I guess that's the thing.
That's the problem, right? That's the problem.
And that's where it gets a little bit scary. I think my plan it was never to hold this stuff till it gets to $10,000 a box or anything like that. So I think a lot of it is just knowing what your exit strategy is. To a degree, and maybe now you accelerate that a little bit. Maybe you limit your risk slightly by saying, you know what, I'm going to move off this stuff when it hits 500-600. If it goes to 1,000, it goes to 1,000. But every time something gets more expensive, it brings in a new host of problems that you have to deal with, whether it's stress on shipping or limits your buyer pool, or there's a
scams,
a ton of different things. Now CT scanning becomes more in the play.
Yep, fully agree.
It's harder to move that stuff. There's tons of different angles to it. Sure, you made a ton of money on that box that you bought for 80, but I don't know. Buying a box for 80 and selling it for 300 or 400 is never bad.
No.
Congratulations, you executed the plan perfectly. But
Exactly.
Sometimes we get a little too greedy, or we worry about selling too soon. Everyone wants to sell at the top.
You never know when the top is until you're at the bottom. Like, oh, there it is. It was up in there 2 months ago. In our case right now. Speaking of the top and the bottom, CGC's recent events. I know you covered it. You did a pretty good video on it. A lot of hype and a lot of speculation on what that means for the company as a whole going forward. I think they're going to handle it much like PSA handled other things in the past and other grading companies have. Now, I think if we fast forward a year, the question is, what's going to happen to CGC, and will the trust be there? I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what you think.
I think it's going to depend on how they handle it, and I think it's going to take a long time to play out. I cited it in the videos.
Yeah, it was like 6 months.
Very similar. They had a major controversy with comic books a year ago. Slightly different. It wasn't the exact same thing, but it was, the integrity of what was inside the case was called into question. Right. And it's taken a year for a lot of that stuff to play out. And I think CGC will make people whole. I really do, to some degree. You might have to fight with them a little bit, but overall, I think they will take care of people to some degree. I think that takes a lot of time. I think some people will probably be okay with it. Some people will be pissed about it, just like anything. But I think what's ultimately in their favor, as sad it is, what we just talked about, is these hobbies have a very short-term memory. And there'll be a new controversy next week.
There we go.
And there'll be a new controversy the week after that. And there'll be a new controversy the week after that. And then Pokemon will crash, or whatever it is will crash. And then all of a sudden, it's the 30th anniversary and everyone cares about that. And no one cares about the grading company anymore. And then PSA will do something stupid and everyone will get mad about that. And that's the shell game that we play. So does it hurt them a little bit? Yeah, probably. Are they going to zero because of it? No.
Yeah, exactly.
That's as sad as the state is that we live in. Most of these companies and people are probably not held don't have as many ramifications that in the moment that we think are going to happen. When you're making the clickbait thumbnail, it's a huge deal, and then a week later, it's really not in some cases. I mean, it sucks that they did it. It's terrible. It's a terrible look on their company. The whole situation seems like an absolute mess. Maybe they grade 10% less Pokemon cards next year because of it. And I don't even know that it's that much.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, I think we get caught in this feedback loop of we think everything happens on YouTube or IG. And in reality, that's probably only like 5 to 10% of the overall Pokemon. Like if we're talking Pokemon specifically, like if you divided up the pool, maybe 15% are active in YouTube comments on videos and paying attention to every little single thing that's going on. And that might be, I might be way overestimating that at 15%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for Pokemon in general, I'd say way overestimated. For graded cards, maybe, but yeah. I would agree. And you can even use the example of when they changed the grading scale. It was the biggest deal. You can't trust them. What's going to happen? What are they going to do next? And nobody's talking about that. I love that new Gen Mint 10. That pristine looks beautiful.
I still miss the blue label.
So yeah, it tends to just sweep under the rug really quickly, really easily, except for those that are directly affected, which then they make a decision to change grading companies. Yeah, I don't think they're going to go to zero. I do think that they have good intentions to make it right, though. It's in their best interest to do so. I mean,
yeah, it would be.
Why would they not? Yeah.
They'd be idiotic not to. But it will take a lot of time. I do think that it will take a long time for this process to play out.
Well, even financially speaking, as you're paying that out through insurance and whatever impacts that has to the premiums and everything else, like you don't want to do that all in the same month. If you pay all that out in the same month, it's going to be terrible financially speaking. You want to roll that out over a year. And it's okay. We got 15 million. We'll just divide it up and 1 point whatever million per month, and we'll try to do it that way. That's exactly what any company would do from a financial perspective. Yeah, I don't think Civic that, oops, sorry, wrong one. I don't think that they are looking at metadata. They may now, but I just don't think
they all are now.
Yeah, now, but I don't think that was a thing before this. I never heard about it. I've never heard anybody speak about it in the grading companies. I don't know about you, Rob. Have you?
No, I didn't even know it existed until last week.
Yeah, so who knows? But I don't think so, Civic. I think that it's going to be a new feature. It's going to be a new feature for them to raise the price of grading by $1 or more. Let's look now at one topic, I think, before we start to transition it over. Actually, two topics, but one of them quickly. One of the things that I see very differently perceived between Pokemon and sports is, and again, variation in this statement here, but cleaning, card cleaning. What is the general consensus of that in sports hobby? Because we kind of know what it is on the Pokemon side. What is it like on the sports side? It seems to be more well accepted.
Boy, that's a hot button topic. There is a very large camp of people that are microfiber only. Like, take your microfiber, wipe it off, maybe blow a little hot breath on it, and that's technically what PSA says is allowable. But there is definitely a new school mentality of, I don't want to say whatever it takes to get to 10, but whatever it takes outside of trimming and true color touch, a lot of people are willing to do. You know, whether it's juicing it, soaking it, chemicals, rubbing it down, you know, massaging it, the whole 9 yards. Everyone seems to have a pretty hard stance on like trimming and true like color touch. That seems to be like the line in the sand for people. There's a large segment of people that want to play in the gray area, and there's a large segment of people that say that it's all bad. And it's a very divisive topic in the sports card community.
Okay, so it's about the same as it is in Pokemon then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is. There is for sure though a new school attitude of, yeah, let's get some Kurtz juice and spray it all over this thing, and whatever it takes, as long as it gets a 10 at the end of the day, it's not my problem. The grading company said it was a 10. That's good enough for me. Doesn't matter how it got there. And I think it really honestly should be somewhere in the middle. I haven't been bashful about this. You know, on the comic book side, a lot of stuff flies that does not fly in the card space, but I think
they press and everything.
Yeah,
right? They clean and press.
Whole 9 yards. There's a ton of stuff that flies in comics, but the comic community accepted it early on, and the grading companies rolled with it, and you know what's allowable and what's not, and everyone plays by those rules. I mean, there's still people that are always going to cheat the rules. There's things you can't do, but yeah, cards there is a large chunk of like old school mentality of anything beyond a microfiber is evil, but the new school does not. Some of them think that way, but a lot more of them are more willing to play in that gray area. So I think it's actually probably more similar to Pokemon than you might realize.
Okay.
And I don't know, to be fair, I don't know necessarily all the hot takes on the Pokemon side when it comes to grading, but it sounds like it's fairly similar.
It's pretty much the same, but there's a very small, I would say, minority that thinks the card cleaning and soaking is a good idea. Very small. The majority feel that it's just not, just again, microfiber, hot breath, a little dab of water maybe, and that's all you got.
Yeah, we probably have a little more that live in the, you know, the spraying it down with chemicals are okay on the sports card side. Probably a higher percentage of that.
But the surface is different. This is why I was asking as well, because the card structure is actually different a lot of times in sports. One of the things I also thought about as I thought through this question is going to be, it's been happening a lot longer, I think, on the sports side. You know, we didn't know about it for a long time.
Yeah, it's not new.
Have you seen any bad effects, again, not of trimming or coloring, but like of waxing, of dipping and clean? Have you seen like, oh, this card 10 years later now looks like this, and we can tell what the effects are of these things? Have you seen anything?
I haven't personally seen anything in hand. There's been a handful of videos going around, you know, over the years whenever cleaning comes up about, you know, someone had a card and a stain came back after a while.
Oh, okay.
But they don't actually know that it was, I don't know that they know for sure that it was clean originally. It's kind of like more of an assumption.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know that we've actually seen hard evidence one way or the other. Like, there's no real scientific data of, I soaked this card 10 years ago and now here's how it looks compared to one that I didn't. But I do feel like a lot of this stuff we would know from comics because it has been going on a lot longer in comics. Now,
good point.
The processes are different. The chemicals aren't the same. You know, you're not using chemicals sometimes in comics. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. But also, like you said, they've been using stuff on these cards long before PSA came around. And there's a lot of them in circulation out there, and we haven't seen negative effects to this point. It's not like there's this there's not like these piles of slabs with these cards that all of a sudden just have weird stuff going on.
Peeling off
the whole
all the color.
Now, maybe that could absolutely still happen. You know, who knows?
Yep.
So we'll see.
All right. Yeah, I was just curious because when I'm scrolling with Instagram or whatever the case may be, and something like that pops up, almost 99% of the time it's sports cards. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess this is just they're cool with it. Because I look through the comments and people aren't really saying much. Oh, hey, how'd you do that? This is great, good idea. And like, okay,
Yeah.
I guess they like it. You look at comments in a Pokemon section, and they're getting lit up very quickly.
It's probably like 60% are like 50% are like a hard no. 30% are like, yeah, let's do it. And then there's this like segment in between where they kind of want to cherry pick some things. Like, oh, I think you actually should be able to do that, but you shouldn't be able to do that. Right. You know, there's like a gray area of they want to play in between on stuff. But as of right now, all the grading companies' stances are, you know, microfiber's cool. You want to breathe on the card a little bit, cool. Maybe even a dab of distilled water, that's okay. Don't go crazy. But the problem is 99.9% of the stuff they can't catch.
Right. Yeah.
Or they don't want to put the effort and time and money in it to catch it, you know, one or the other, or a little bit of both. You know, so that's the trick. That's the hard part.
Good to see you, Boondock. Thanks for stopping in, buddy. All right, one last one, and then we'll move it to a close up. I wanted to hear your thoughts on the overall Pokemon hype and what you see as far as hype in the other markets. We've obviously joked about it here. The past 2 months have been crazy. Anything since Search and Sparks has just been blowing up. We're on a pretty good run at the moment. I don't really see it slowing down for quite a while. Journey Together is already pretty much looking like it's going to be about the same as the last, if maybe slightly give or take. Team Rocket's coming up, all kinds of interesting things. Anniversary right in the corner. I think it's going to be running for a hot minute. What do you see in sports or comics or Marvel or anywhere else? Is the market just booming everywhere, or is this really a Pokemon specific thing?
Sports is pretty stable right now. It's not going to the moon. It's not going to zero. It feels like it's in a pretty decent spot. The new releases get all the hype because the company has designed them to, here's the next greatest card ever created, you know, every 3 months. And here's the thing everyone needs to go chase, playing into that gambling like nature of it all. But like, if you actually look at like more stable cards that aren't the flavor of the week, over the last year, they've actually held up pretty okay. Like, you're not retiring off of it. You're not probably even necessarily maybe even making a profit, but they haven't gone down that much either. Like, if you're looking at like, you know, True Blue, you know, a Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Upper Deck rookie card, or, you know, a Larry Bird rookie card, or an 86 Jordan, you know, like those things have actually kind of stabilized fairly decently. Comics, they lag behind sports a little bit. They still feel like they're still kind of finding the floor. It's stabilized a little bit, but it definitely feels like things are still trending down. And I think a lot of that plays into the general apathy lately for like the new Disney releases and stuff has been not great on a lot of stuff. So that hasn't helped. Though the Fantastic Four trailer dropped today. It looks absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Everyone's freaking out about it. It came out this morning.
I had to go check it out.
So maybe that breathes a little life into things. But comics is a much slower moving entity. There's just not a lot that happens to juice it. You know, you're not getting, there's no chase for the new set. There's no, you can't come up with a hot new first appearance every other month. It's just not the way that it works. So it's much more driven off of the pop culture of it all. And lately that hasn't been that great. So I think it's kind of put a little bit of a damper on that. And then, yeah, I agree with you. Like, overall, Pokemon is going to stay hot for probably the next year. I think, like, I don't follow, I mean, I follow Magic decently close, but I don't have nowhere near as much money invested in it. I buy a very occasional release here and there. But, like, to me, as a semi-outsider, like, Magic feels like it's in a pretty good spot right now overall. It feels like Wizards has figured out their nonsense from a couple of years ago.
Agreed.
And kind of restabilized things to a degree. Like, that feels like it's in a pretty healthy spot. And I don't follow a lot of the other TCGs super closely. And yeah, I agree. Pokemon seems like it's going to be on a banger run for at least the next, probably through the 30th anniversary. at least, and then eventually, listen, nothing goes up forever. At some point in time,
Right.
something's
It's
going to
gonna
happen.
stop. Yeah.
That's going to reset things. And it could not even be Pokemon. Like we say, Pokemon could have a great next year and a half. Outside forces could completely change that. I mean,
agreed.
Like something could happen tomorrow in the world, and then all of a sudden it's, hey man, eggs are $10 a piece, and Pokemon packs just aren't in the fortune anymore. And next thing you know, all those wonderful gains we've seen on our spreadsheets on sealed or singles is right back to where they were 2 months ago,
or worse. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, or worse potentially. I don't see that. I think that's an extreme case, but listen, crazier things have happened.
I hope not, for all of us, not just from the collecting space, but what do it mean to the world?
I mean, look at peak pandemic. Everyone, if you were like a naysayer at all, people thought you were absolutely crazy. And then look how that ended up. That stuff does not go up forever.
Exactly. Yeah,
things happen that you have zero control over. That even if everything looks great on paper, it gets sidetracked, and the next thing you know, it's like, wait, what just happened? Why didn't I sell 5 months ago?
Yeah. Oh, that was the top. Oh, that's right. There we are. Back at the
bottom. Oh, like now I see it clear as day, dummy.
All right, man. Well, I tell you what, dude, this has been a really great conversation. I love kicking off 2025 with you, Rob. I appreciate your time coming on. Sorry we went a little bit over. I try to be respectful of the time. We always finish up with 2 questions, and then from there, we'll say goodnight to the crowd. The last one's for you, kind of more specific. Collecting really is a lifestyle. And what your collecting journey, or what has your collecting journey taught you that you think would be maybe most helpful to some of the people listening, somebody just starting their collecting journey? What's a couple of nuggets of value and wisdom that you could share?
Don't chase FOMO, even though it's hard. Keep separate finances, whatever that means to you. It's going to be different for everybody, but try not to mix your real life money with your collectible money, and know that anything that you buy has the potential to be worthless. Like, just assume that it could go to zero. Like, that's the joke clickbait title. It's going to zero, but assume that it actually could. Like, don't buy it thinking it's going to take you to the moon, that it's going to pay for your kid's college, that it's going to pay for your next car. It could. It very well could, but don't go into it thinking that. Buy it because you actually want it, or buy it, whether it's you think it's a sound decision, whatever the case might be. Don't buy stuff because someone else, tells you that it's a good idea to go buy it, even though we all fall into those traps. It's hard. But yeah, the biggest one would be don't chase FOMO as much as possible, and try to separate money as best as you possibly can. Whether that's setting $50 a week aside from your paycheck to be like, this is the $50 I'm going to blow on whatever I want to blow it on, or that's you doing some of the things that we talked about. You take that $50, you buy some raw cards, you grade it, you make some money off that. You keep churning it. Every once in a while, you siphon some off to buy a piece for the PC. But don't get in over your head on this stuff, because that's where you get in the trouble, and that's when it becomes not fun. Remember, this is supposed to be fun.
That's the point of it, right? That's the point of it.
It shouldn't be adding extra levels of stress to your day. If it is, then maybe it's time to step back. And I guess that would be the other thing. Don't be afraid to take a break. If you need to walk away from a little bit, that's okay. This stuff is all going to be here.
Right.
Very few things are that rare that you can't buy it later.
Right. Or you can just print your own copy.
Yeah. All you need is a 7-Eleven printer and you're good to go.
All right, my friend. We'll end it right here. The last question we always ask is, what legacy do you want to leave when you leave the hobby?
Oh, boy, that's a big one. Treat people right. You don't want, we kind of talked about it earlier with the skeins. You don't want to get yourself, you don't want to do something that you wouldn't want to have received on your own end. You don't want to do something shady, do something stupid, and have that end up in a collector's hands. Because think about how you would feel if you bought that card on eBay, or you got this thing and you got it and you were super excited to get it, and then you open it up and it's like wait, this thing's like duct taped together. What happened here?
Yeah.
You know, so just it's simple. It's just treat people the way that you want to be treated, and that stuff will circle back around. Like, don't be an idiot. Don't try to take advantage of people. Like, just you win some, you lose some. It is what it is. But don't try to pass that junk off on other people and try to screw people. Like, it's just not.
It's not,
you know. So if people take like one lesson away, like take that and have fun. Like, this is supposed to be, like we just said, this is supposed to actually be fun. Like, this is supposed to be a hobby. This is supposed to be a collectible space. And I think we all get a little too heated sometimes on this stuff, and take time out. Like, this is supposed to be what chills you out from your main stressors in your life.
The main
not
stressor
causing stressors. And if it is causing the stressors, then all right, it's okay to walk away for a little bit. It's
take a break.
We all do it. We've all done it over the years of leaving it and coming back, and leaving it and coming back.
So I think that also answers your question, Walrus. Wait, is the hobby not supposed to be a source of crippling depression? No. No. Take a break. Walk away. Well, Rob, it has been an absolute pleasure. Again, thank you so much for the time. Can't thank you enough. Everybody, if you haven't already checked out Rob's YouTube, IG, and of course his new YouTube channel, all the links are down below in the description. Please go give him a love, follow, a subscribe, a heart, whatever it may be. Show that love. And guys, we appreciate you. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you on the next one. Until then, have a great night, everybody.
Peace.